Ah, much better. The sun is murder today. I swear, Clank, I'm done with all that hero stuff. Now, let somebody else save the universe and... I need a little me time.
If there is trouble, then it is our duty to ensure that...
Nah! What'd you do that for? Whoa, what are you doing?
I'm taking pictures for my school project. I'm doing a report on heroes, and I recognize you from the newspaper. You're Ratchet, right?
Well, I see you have a knack for recognizing greatness.
I was wondering if it would be possible to get some pictures of you doing some heroic action.
Well, I would, but there's really not much heroic work to do around here. Oh, I can lift Clank over my head, though. How about that?
I was thinking maybe you could fight some robots or something. I know where you could find them.
I do have a massage scheduled in 15 minutes, but, oh, what the heck. I could use a bit of exercise. Come on, buddy. Let's put on a good show for our little reporter here.
I am going to regret this.
Alright, so it looks like Ratchet and Clank are off on another galaxy-spanning adventure. I mean, that's not how this is starting, but you know that's where it's gonna go. We're gonna start our adventure by following this robot girl and murdering all the local wildlife and other inhabitants. Did you do that a lot in Ratchet and Clank games? Usually there's a good reason for it, but not in this case. In this case, we're just murdering everything because the little girl wants us to. And you know what pleases children more than slaughtering animals and people with high-powered gun weaponry? I can't think of a single thing. I can't think of a single better thing. And you might be like, alright, that's fine, it was just crabs. These aren't just crabs. These people were blowing up right here. These are inhabitants of this island coming out of their huts. Presumably because we murdered their friend. You know? And now we're killing them in cold blood with our lacerator, which is this game's version of the combustor, or viper, or blaster, or whatever you want to call it. Basically, it shoots straight. It's the most basic gun we have. But you know, this little girl says, hey, I want to watch him murder stuff so I can take pictures. We're gonna murder stuff. We're not gonna ask questions. That's what we do. We kill things. Anyway, the lacerator is actually going to be super important because in this game, story's a little short. So we're not going to want to buy too many weapons, otherwise we won't be able to adequately upgrade them for the endgame. And you might think that's a little sad, but the shooting isn't really a highlight of this game. The platforming and environments are the highlight of this game, because there's some really nice platforming and some really nice environmental variety here. They got pretty creative with some stuff. In addition to the lacerator, we also have the acid bomb, which is this game's version of the bomb glove from the original Ratchet and Clank. It works okay. It deals slow acid damage over time. The acid can't hurt us, it can only hurt enemies. It's a pretty chill weapon for situations where you can't just shoot straight ahead, but there's very few situations where you can't just shoot straight ahead. I'm going to use it right now anyway so you can see what it's like. It creates a puddle of acid, and enemies that step in it take slow acid damage. It's an alright weapon. It's not as good as the actual bomb glove or bomb glove equivalents in other Ratchet games, but it's alright. And you know, if you actually want to grind to level up the weapons in this game, then you can do that, and you can level up all your weapons for the late game. But if you just want to go through the story and not grind, then you're going to want to stick with just a couple weapons, because otherwise you're not going to have weapons that are adequately leveled to take on the final boss encounters. Because they can get pretty tough. Speaking of leveling up, I guess I should explain how that works. When we use a weapon, it gains experience and eventually levels up. It gets stronger that way. And when it's at max level, it undergoes a change to its functionality. Sometimes the changes are subtle, sometimes they're not. We can also level up Ratchet. We level up Ratchet by killing enemies, and when Ratchet levels up, he gains more health. This is very, very important. Not as important as armor, though, which we'll see later. Right now, in the first level, enemies are really, really basic. I assume this is so you can get used to the PSP control scheme, because this was a PSP game, even though we're playing the PS2 version. But the first level is pretty relaxing and chill. It's pretty easy to shoot things in this level. I do think it sucks a little bit. Oh man, what was that graphical glitch back there? I do think it sucks a little bit that the starting level in this game is on Pokitaru instead of Aquatos, because this takes place after Deadlocked, and at the end of Deadlocked it's implied they're going on vacation in Aquatos. I get they wanted to call back to Pokitaru and the Jowai Resort from the first game, but, you know, Aquatos would have made more sense. We just got the Wildfire body armor, so now we have more defense and can take more hits.
Oh, that was super! I can't wait to show everyone the pictures!
Quark?
Clank! What a coincidence! What are you doing here?
I am trailing Ratchet and Clank to see what they are doing, so I can join in on their next adventure.
Hey, that's what I'm doing! No, wait,
Do you not have somewhere else to go? Home to your family, perhaps?
Hey, Quark. Nice hat. Sorry, Quark. What? Was that your mother's hat or something? Seriously, dude. It's just a hat.
It's not that. It's my mother and father. I never knew my family. I was given up for adoption as a baby and was raised by monkeys.
Okay. Thanks for sharing.
Perhaps you should attempt to find your real parents.
There she is. Get her.
Looks like I'm gonna be late for my massage. Let's go.
One of the very, very few things I like about this game's narrative and characters is that Ratchet complains about saving the galaxy so many times, but when shit actually goes down, he's all there. He's ready. We have new enemies to fight now. We have these green robots to fight, and they're actually threatening because they have projectiles. Also, sometimes when we shoot them, their heads pop off, and they become spider robots instead. Their attacks aren't particularly hard to dodge. You could probably dodge them without even strafing. So, you know, there's that. We're going to be seeing a lot of them up here and for the rest of the level as we platform around looking... Yeah, here's their spider variant. As we look for the robot girl that got kidnapped. Enemies take a surprising amount of hits in this game, by the way. I know it may not seem like a lot right now, but it gets to be a little obscene later in the game. And that's because they really expect you to have some of the late game guns by the time you get there. Which is something I didn't appreciate too much about this game. In other Ratchet games, I find that you can choose guns that you like, as long as you have like 4 or 5 of them and stick with those. But in this game, it expects you to have bought late game guns. Otherwise, you're going to die at the final boss. That's just how it goes. You know, I thought at first maybe I was just playing the game real shitty, which felt weird because I'm used to being pretty good at Ratchet games. You know, I had my 3 favorite guns that I leveled up all the way, and I felt pretty good about it. But I went to the final level and the enemies took so many hits and barely suffered any knockback from my attacks. And that felt really weird, and then I found out it's just because the game expected me to have the late game guns equipped instead of the guns I actually wanted to use. I think I've already mentioned I'm playing the PS2 version, and this is the definitive version of the game to play. If you're curious, I heard some bad... Oh, hey, here's the first actually challenging encounter. There's a big block in the middle that we can't shoot past, so we have to strafe around the sides to hit the enemies. Nothing too serious, but, you know, it's something. Much better than before. And now we have the Wildfire gloves. When we get a whole set of one type of armor, then we get a special bonus. The bonuses aren't that great, but there's one in particular that's nice. Anyway, as I was saying, this version I'm playing, the PS2 version, is the definitive version of Size Matters, if you were curious. The PSP version just controls a hell of a lot worse, and the graphics are worse. I heard bad things about this version, about the PS2 version, but it turns out people were lying. The graphics actually have been reasonably remastered. There's new details in the environment. Things look better. Not as good as a mainline Ratchet game, but they still look pretty good, and the game controls better. So I'm not sure why you'd want the PSP version over this one. Maybe the flaws of this game are just less noticeable on the PSP, I'm not sure. This island right here has a bunch of crabs that keep spawning and spawning and spawning. So we're just gonna jump on the next platform instead of kill them all. Otherwise it'd take too long. I really like the enemies that shoot at you while you're on this raft, because giving you limited space to dodge is one of the few challenging things they can do to you in this game that doesn't feel bullshit. It's obvious a lot of effort went into trying to make this game feel like a Ratchet and Clank game. I don't think it really does, though. Feels like a pretty okay 3D action platformer, with some characters that you may recognize from another game series in it. The writing certainly isn't Ratchet and Clank quality, that's for sure. I like being able to hop off the platform and back on it. It's a really small thing to be able to do. You can do it in other Ratchet and Clank games as well. But the fact that you can do it here just, says, this is an actual game. Not just a game made to sell PSPs. This is an actual video game that someone put time and effort into. Some really basic hopping on platforms here. Obviously, we're going to want to kill the crab that's camping on one of the platforms ahead of time. Can easily use the lacerator to do it and easily use our wrench. But, I'm killing for uses for the acid bomb glove. We're not going to get to use it very much. So we just did that instead. We're very near the end of the level now. If this level seemed really average, well, yeah, it is the first level. Things get a lot better and a lot more creative in terms of platforming and environments, but this is a fun little hop and bop level. Get you used to the basic controls, has some really simple enemies that you really shouldn't get hit by if you know what you're doing. And you should start leveling up your lacerator here, right now, because you're going to need the fully leveled up lacerator if you don't want to make the game too hard on yourself in the late game. Just level it up as fast as you can.
Target acquired. Proceeding to Kalidon.
Help me!
I can't believe we lost her. Why would they want a little girl?
I do not believe they were after her. I believe they were after this.
Well, this is, what is this?
If my memory bank serves me correctly, I believe it is a technomite artifact.
Yeah, right. Seriously, what is it?
It is a technomite artifact.
Look, Clank, that girl is in trouble and we can help her. Technomites are just some fairy story that parents tell their kids to explain how technology works. They don't really exist.
I believe they do exist, and this could prove it. That is why those robots wanted that child to get this object.
Did we? Did you? Whoa, that was quite a jog. Is that what I think it is? Oh, gimme! I haven't seen one of these since... Well, I've never actually seen one, but I've heard stories about the Technomites and their mystical objects.
There are no Technomites!
But this is our only lead. If you want to help that girl, we should follow the coordinates etched on the side.
Fine. Let's get out of here. See ya, Quark. And please, stay out of our way this time.
The Technomites appear to have abandoned this area.
Yeah, the Technomites are real tricky that way. All right, let's get this over with. Where are we going?
Well...
I'd go that way, but that's just me.
Oh, Quark. Why can't you just leave us alone?
Look, I can help you. I've been here before.
Do you know where we should take this object?
Of course I do. But what's in it for me?
You want to find your family, right?
Uh-huh.
Well, if you tell us where to go, you can stay here and use our ship's computer to research your family history.
Ooh, great idea! I'll do it!
Quark, where do we take the artifact?
I'll try that big building. For some reason, the good stuff is always in the biggest buildings.
Thanks, Quark. You've been helpful.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Ryllus, also known as the first level where you might die a couple of times and some of the enemy types can actually be challenging. But that takes a bit longer to say. The environment here also, I've been saying this a lot recently, bit of a forest mixed with ruined temple aesthetic. Been saying that so much recently. There are these tiny enemies with swords that we can thankfully one-shot with our leveled up Lacerator. It's really satisfying to kill them in one shot, really irritating if you can't kill them in one shot, because this game's controls aren't great. They're functional, but this is a port of a PS2 game, so the controls could be better. As long as you're facing one direction, strafing and shooting, then that's all good, but when there are enemies to your sides or behind you, it gets a little strange. I wanted to talk about that enemy, but it's dead now, so I really can't. Don't worry, we'll talk about it later, even though there's not much to talk about in regards to it. Just breaking boxes, as one does in Ratchet and Clank if they want to buy weapons. Because that's how we get money.
Those cameras just keep coming. What should we do?
Just ignore them. They are probably an automatic security system.
All right, let's keep moving. They blow up real good, though.
Alright, and we're about to be introduced to our first genuinely challenging enemy type, this acid-spitting plant. If this acid-spitting plant hits you, it will kill you in 2 to 3 hits, depending on what level you're at. So you need to pay close attention to where the acid blob is headed and not step in it. Especially this first time with this first plant we killed, because we didn't have a lot of room to dodge. Here are those enemies I wanted to talk about again. I really should really get to talking about these enemies, these ones we're killing right now. Maybe next time, because they're dead already. Did you know you can tap the L1 button to center the camera behind Ratchet? I feel like that information should have come up earlier. You know, like maybe a whole level earlier, but I guess better late than never. These small enemies are really good to level up our Lacerator, so it's nice for them to line up all nice and neat so we can slaughter them like this. It's very polite.
Whoa! Hang on there. Now be careful with that. Whew, that was a close one. Now, let me have that water pistol, little fella.
It works! I finally perfected my Sprout-O-Matic!
Sprout-O-Matic, you say? How does it work?
By shooting mimic plants, you can make them follow you. Then, by using it to water electrosoil, the plant will hop in and transform itself into a platform, a creature, whatever you need.
Did you hear that, Ratchet? That would come in very handy.
Yeah, great.
Since you helped with the final test, I will give you this prototype to try for yourselves. Wow!
Alright, so now we have the Sprout-O-Matic, which is one of the really fun gadgets in this game. This game has a lot of creative and cute gadgets and platforming mechanics that aren't in any other Ratchet games, and I think that's really the highlight. Anyway, we can use the Sprout-O-Matic to wake up a mimic plant and then drag the mimic plant over to some soil, and when it jumps in the soil, it'll transform. Different mimic plants transform into different things, as the help desk lady is trying to say, but I'm Let's Playing and I want to say it. We use that mimic plant to blow up a wall, and when we hop in here, we see 2 flowers that'll shoot acid. Thankfully, they're both in front of us, so we can just strafe left to right and jump, and they'll be dead before you know it. Very convenient situation to be in, where you can just strafe straight left and right and jump. That's the most ideal situation you can be in this game. Here's another mimic plant. This one is a different color, and as such will turn into something different. There are 3 or 4 things they can turn into. Sometimes you'll need to choose which direction you plant the mimics in. They do a reasonably good job of exploring the mechanic, but it doesn't show up too much. Presumably because they didn't want it to get old. The mimic plants can easily die, by the way, if they're shot by you or enemies. Here's some of those tiny guys with swords. And that enemy type back there, these blue cougar tiger things with spikes that I still haven't talked about. But they're dead, so maybe we'll talk about them next time. It's not really super bad if a mimic plant dies while it's following you. It just means you have to go back to where it spawned and get it again, which can be a little frustrating, but it's a really minor inconvenience. This one's going to turn into a launcher plant, which will throw us some distance away. We can't control our flight path or anything. The launcher plant will just hurl us where it wants to. And thankfully where it wants to hurl us is always in the proper direction. We have the concussion gun and Agents of Doom available to purchase, but we do not want those. We do not want to buy a lot of extra guns in this game, because then we will not have enough time or money to get what we need to win without some grinding, and I don't want to do grinding. So the plants are lined up just like they were last time, but also little tiny dudes come out. So it's slightly harder than the last encounter we had with these plants, but not too much. There are more tiny dudes than there are plants. Maybe if there was a third flower in the middle to spit acid, then this encounter would be genuinely tough instead of just mildly distracting. But as it stands, it's only mildly distracting. And you know, we already did it without getting hit. Shouldn't complain about this game being too easy, because I really didn't like the end game the first time I played. Here's that enemy we still haven't... Oh hey, our Lacerator leveled up. Only one more level, and the Lacerator will be at max level, I believe. There are only 4 levels for each gun. All those enemies died before I could talk about them again, but that's fine. Hey look, it's a launcher plant, we can tell because of the color. So let's leave the launcher plant over here, and plant it. And then we're going to see what's over here to the side. Oh hey, it's more of these deadly flowers, and this time there are 3 all lined up, just like on my Christmas wish list. And as such, you would think this encounter would be more difficult, but you can kill one of the plants before you even hop up here, so it's not really, sadly. Hey look, a second mimic. So this time we'll need to plant 2 mimics in the same soil, but we already have this launcher plant. So let's see where it launches us. Ah, yeah, see? Probably should have planted the other mimic plant first. So, that's what the puzzle solving in this game is like. Sometimes you plant one mimic plant before the other, otherwise you'll be doing it out of order. It's not mind-blowing stuff, you know. You plant this bomb mimic plant first to blow up the wall, then plant the launcher mimic plant so you can go through the wall. It's real simple, but it's more than none thought, and more than none thought is good thought. It's also just a really fun gimmick. Even if they didn't do anything to explore it, it would still be a cute gimmick, but thankfully they do bother to explore it, and this isn't the last we'll see of the mimic plants, but we won't see too much more of them, because this game isn't, like, obsessed with its gimmicks or anything like that. Here's a titanium bolt. We're not going to be collecting the titanium bolts. I don't care about them, so I'm sorry to burst your bubble. Here's the wildfire helmet, and now we're only missing the boots, and we'll have the complete set, and you can look forward to that next time.
Yeah, great. It's locked. Well, looks like we'll never find out what that weird doohickey is. Come on, let's go.
I am able to squeeze through this crevice. Wait here, and I will unlock it from the inside.
All right, just don't take all day.
I mean, Ratchet, I'm sorry, buddy, but we're entering a Clank puzzle segment, so it's gonna be a while. As anyone who's played the Ratchet & Clank series probably knows, there are a lot of sections where you control Clank himself and run around solving puzzles with tiny robots called Gadgetobots. You can control the Gadgetobots with your mind, and command them to do one of 4 things to solve puzzles. Now, there's nothing wrong with the design of these puzzles, or with the idea behind the Gadgetobots, or anything like that, but I personally just found them a little bit bothersome, because most of the time I'd rather get back to platforming and shooting, instead of solving puzzles, with an entirely different gameplay style. But I found the Gadgetobots and the Clank sections to be less bothersome in this game because this doesn't feel like a normal Ratchet & Clank game to me. It feels like a completely different 3D platformer starring Ratchet & Clank. So, it didn't bother me as much because I wasn't really waiting to get back into the 3D platforming and shooting. You know, that's not really what I'm here for. When I'm playing Up Your Arsenal and I have to stop shooting to do a what are those called? To do a hacker segment or a Clank segment, yeah, that's a little bothersome. But in this game, where I'm here for the environmental variety, the kind of creative but pretty standard puzzles, and the atmosphere, yeah, you know, the Clank sections are less bothersome. I welcome things in this game that are a distraction from the shooting, even new enemy types, because although those lead to more shooting, it's a more variety that briefly distracts me from how the core shooting mechanics aren't so good. It's not that they're awful, it's just the game's needlessly difficult to control. Not to the point that it's, you know, as bad as the PSP version, and the game functions okay, it's just not fun to shoot stuff in this one. Because it fights you. Hey, look, a statue. Strange alien man. I wonder if he's going to be important later. I'm sure he won't be. I'm sure that statue has absolutely no significance. Here's one of the new mechanics in Size Matters, the Bot Flinger. We can grab the Gadgetbots and hurl them using this device. We solve a couple of puzzles with this thing and then never see it again. But it's cute and fun. I actually did not expect to see something like this in this game the first time I played it. So when I did see the Bot Flinger, I was like, oh wow, they actually tried to put new things in here. It's like an actual video game.
Press the triangle button to
But yeah, the Bot Flinger doesn't get a lot of use. Has a couple of cute puzzles in this level and only this level. But this is the only level with Gadgetbots in it, which I was also surprised by, but that's not unwelcome. I was also glad when the Gadgetbots got a makeover in the Ratchet & Clank 2016 reboot, so I no longer had to control them with my mind, and it was more of a traditional platforming puzzle than it was whatever you want to call this that we're doing right now. I mentioned up your arsenal. Oh, here's one of the very few puzzles with the Bot Flinger. We have to throw the bots on those red buttons, but first we're going to look at more of these statues. These ominous green statues. Anyway, we have to throw the Gadgetbots on these red buttons, which requires a degree of aiming. Not exactly a lot of aiming. The reticle is very lenient. But sure, that's fun and cute. You don't do this in any other Ratchet game. As I was saying, I brought up Your Arsenal earlier. I have been playing that alongside Size Matters, so I'd have another game to compare it to. Size Matters, Up Your Arsenal is pretty okay. For this section, by the way, there are just darts shooting across the room, and we have to get the Gadgetbots across the room without getting them blown up by the darts. The timing is fine. It's not hard to time it properly. You can go back and get any that blow up, because they respawn. Anyway, as I was saying, Up Your Arsenal is okay. I can easily see why so many people consider it the best Ratchet & Clank title, and I can see why it was so popular. But there's just not a lot to analyze or talk about in it. Because there are so many weapons and all of them have to be viable solutions to any given problem, pretty much, with a few exceptions. You know, because you want to make all of those wacky weapons useful. The design is really open, so it's kind of hard to sit down and analyze each enemy encounter, because you could be playing with one of any of the many, many weapons. And it would still be possible to analyze the enemy encounters if the enemy designs tried to be challenging regardless of what weapon you were using. But the enemy designs and their patterns were also really bland. Like, for most of the enemy types to dodge, you just strafe around them and jump a whole lot. Which is a common complaint I have for difficulty in Ratchet games in general, is that it's really easy to just strafe around them and jump a lot to avoid getting hit. Now granted, the game does get pretty difficult later because you die in 2 to 3 hits, as is the standard for late game in Ratchet & Clank. But I feel like that's kind of a cheap way to increase the difficulty. Like having to make it through a 3 to 5 minute segment full of like 3 to 5 different shootouts, where 2 to 3 hits will kill me, and then I have to restart at the beginning of those segments if I die. It's kinda cheesy, especially with how much they recycle enemy types. Like in the late game, you'll be fighting the same enemies you are in the first level. They'll just be doing way more damage, and because you are a human, and prone to human error, you're most likely going to get hit 2 or 3 times, and then have to restart a segment because you got hit 2 or 3 times. There is of course a solution to this in the game. You can grind for bolts and buy better armor and weapons, so that way you will die less. But if you want to play the game without grinding, then it gets needlessly difficult toward the end for really bogus reasons. So I just ran past all the enemies, basically. Which turns out to work a lot better than fighting them. I applaud Insomniac for including so many extra ways to get bolts in Up Your Arsenal. There's a fuck ton of different activities to do. You can grab sewer crystals in the sewers, there's like 5 different battlefields. There's the Annihilation Nation Gladiator courses, there's the fitness courses. There's a whole ton of ways to get bolts, if you want to get bolts to upgrade your armor or buy new weapons. You know? There's a lot of ways to do that. But the story also has a lot of momentum going. The story wants you to take it seriously and wants you to get hyped into what's happening. So it's kind of hard to slow down and go, I need to buy more weapons first. The game has absolutely fantastic acting and really over-the-top animation. So it uses the story for reward very well. Wanting to get to the next story segment is a very valid reason to play Up Your Arsenal in addition to the shooting just being fun. I remember the main reason I played Up Your Arsenal when I was younger was for the story. So when you want to get to the next bit of story because you view that as your reward, you really don't want to stop and grind, because that means it'll take longer to get to the story. I wouldn't say the story in Up Your Arsenal is particularly well written, but it's entertaining to watch mostly because of the excellent animation and acting. You know, it's easy to get caught up in it because the characters are just so fun to hang around with. But the flow of the story itself and the events that happen into it just kind of feel a little cheap when you look at them all together. When you're watching it in real time, it feels much more real.
Ratchet.
How do we know this whole place won't explode when you put that on there?
We do not.
See? I told you. Big waste of time. This is so cool. What do you think it is?
It is a Technomite map room. They built these rooms to keep track of the planets they inhabited. This one is Kalidon.
Hey, that's where that robot soldier said he was taking the girl.
Exactly. And here are its coordinates. I have never seen these coordinates on any other maps.
Well, what are we waiting for? Let's go get her.
This does not seem right. It has been too easy.
Easy? How's about I ride around on your back while you do all the fighting?
I mean that if the Technomites want to stay hidden, they are making it awfully easy for us to find them.
I did it! I found my real family! I was poking around on the computer when I got a message from some company called FauxFamily.com. It's my entire family tree! I've got to get to them! Good luck with whatever that was you were doing.
FauxFamily.com? Does that seem odd to you?
Whatever. At least he's out of here. Let's get moving.
See, this is why this game is hard to commentate over. On the one hand, I'm like, oh, this level's going to have a lot of cool stuff to talk about. But on the other hand, I'm like, oh, this is the level where Quark is so out of character, you wonder if it's some random dickhead wearing a Hollow Guise instead. Anyway, we can purchase mods for all of our weapons, which we are going to do for a few of them. Most notably the Lacerator. We want the lock-on mod and the double barrel mod for the Lacerator for the end game. And I hope you like minigames.
Tweaking the old engine, eh?
Why? What have you heard? Who are you? I mean, what are you doing here? Did the committee send you? Sorry, sir. We did not mean to upset you. Yeah, well, you know, you can't be too careful these days, right? I mean, first they accuse me of using nanoroids, right? Then they say I'm like I'm using illegal alternative fuel. Do I look like a cheater to you?
No. Not at all. You seem A-okay to me.
All right, here, man. Let's race. And I'll prove I'm not a cheater. If you can beat me, I'll have a surprise for you.
That weird skateboarding man character looks like a 90s mascot. It's just really weird. He looks like a 90s full of attitude mascot for like a cereal brand or something. It's really throwing me off. Anyway, it's hoverboard time, and the hoverboard minigame in Size Matters is really fucking weird in contrast to the hoverboard minigame in the other Ratchet & Clank games. While we're in the air with our hoverboard, we can press square to boost upward in small increments, and using this we can skip over huge portions of the map. It's sort of a make-your-own shortcut kind of deal. The controls are also incredibly loose. We can boost while we're on the ground by holding square, and that uses our boost meter, just like it uses our boost meter when we boost in the air. Control on the ground is okay, I guess. But the main thing with these hoverboard segments is just how much control you have over your board in the air. That's what makes it stand out. I've played a lot of racing minigames and 3D platformers before, but not so many that give you this much control over your air movement. And a lot of people find the controls to be overly floaty and touchy, but I got used to them pretty quickly, and again, being able to boost in the air to skip over huge parts of the level if you use the boost intelligently feels really good. The boost runs out quickly though, which is why we're picking up these rocket pickups, which fill our boost back up. But yeah, these hoverboard minigames are actually really entertaining, and I would say they're the only minigame in Size Matters that I don't dislike. They really wanted to leave their own stamp on the hoverboard minigame, and I think they did a good job, because this is both entertaining and unique. So yeah, I'm enjoying it, and I think it's fun. I understand why some people have issues with the controls, but you can get used to that. The music here is also like appropriately extreme sports rock stuff. Kind of stuff I would listen to outside of the game just for fun. But one complaint I have about this particular course is that there are 5 laps. You know, after you make it, after you figure out which, shit, hold on. Let me use my brain for a second to figure out this sentence. After you figure out which shortcut you want to take, that's pretty much it. You're pretty much done with this course. There's no reason for it to have 5 laps. The next time we do this minigame, though, it's going to be way crazier and the track layout is way weirder. It's one of those courses with so many different pathways that you're going to be like, wait, is this forward or backward, or what am I doing here? And I could see that kind of thing getting on most people's nerves, but for me, that was really most of the fun, was seeing how badly I could exploit the track layout. And the answer is pretty badly. There are also some fun glitches you can do, but I'm going to try to avoid doing those.
So, you said you'd give us something if we beat you?
This is a shrink ray. They are very difficult to acquire. Here, man. You can have these too. Ugh, they're way too slippery for me to use.
I want you to remember that we got this shrink ray from racing some random dude that we've never met before and is of no significance whatsoever. Because the shrink ray is going to be very important. Anyway, it's time for the actual level part of the level. I like the outside leading up to the complex. I think it looks nice. Sure, the background is a little sparse, but this dirt path with the lights lining it, I think it looks good. It gives off a real sense of atmosphere, like this could be a real place in outer space. Anyway, we are now on Kalidon, which is that planet where they supposedly took that little girl we're searching for. And there is nothing suspicious about this situation in the slightest. And I mean that. Like, there's nothing suspicious about this situation. For any kind of evil plan to require us going to Ryllus, activating an ancient map room, and then coming to Kalidon where they've taken the little girl, is needlessly complicated and has far too many steps. If this is some kind of trap, what I'm saying is it's a really, really stupid trap. They should have just led us directly to Kalidon if they wanted to lead us into a trap. And you know, even if Ratchet suspected from the start it was a trap when they went straight to Kalidon, that wouldn't matter. Ratchet would still try to save the little girl, because that's what he does. Anyway, remember the door unlocking minigames from other Ratchet games? Well, in Size Matters, it's a grind rail section, which kicks ass. We have to hit these little switches to disable the force fields. But replacing those annoying door unlocking minigames with actual platforming that explores the game's mechanics, I'm way into that. I have no idea why the other Ratchet and Clank games didn't think to do something like this, because this is so much better. So yeah, unlike every other Ratchet game where I'm like, ah shit, another door to unlock, in this one I'm like, oh sweet, another door to unlock. And I think that says something about size matters, like, it's nice. Now you can't hear the intercom, but we are inside, we are inside a robot factory at the moment is where we are. Now this robot factory's significance to anything going on is incredibly questionable. They're clearly building the robots here that kidnapped the little girl, and this is a Technomite hideout, so you might come to the conclusion that the Technomites kidnapped the little girl. And I'm not saying you're wrong about that, but it's also extremely stupid for this to be a Technomite hideout for reasons you'll see later. There is no reasons for the Technomites to build a facility this big, let alone where other people can easily find and access it as we did. This is also a very corporate facility with a lot of corporate things going on. Like, it's implied that the robots here are being sold somewhere. And if the Technomites are selling their robots, then someone definitely would have heard of them before. And if they're going through a middleman, then that is not established in the story, which sucks, because that would be actually interesting world building. But there's nothing that interesting about the story in this game. And if, against all logic, the Technomites did build and use a facility this large, that contradicts directly with some things said later in the story. So the significance of this factory is completely unknown. I have no clue whose factory this is, what robots we're fighting, why we're fighting them, or how the Technomites got a hold of these robots. I'm just saying that if this is a Technomite facility, that's the stupidest possible outcome to this situation. I'm just saying. Thankfully, the story neither confirms nor denies any of this, so we can just believe whatever we want to believe about this nonsense. Anyway, this elevator section is okay, I guess. You can't use the traditional strafing mechanics here, but, you know, it's easy enough. You just go bang bang and dodge the shots. These are the same enemies we saw in the first level, so they're really easy to avoid. It takes slightly longer to kill them because of the perspective, but it's not that hard, is what I'm saying. It's a nice change of pace, though. They never pull this anywhere else in the game, and it adds a bit of variety to the combat. I wouldn't have minded seeing more sections like this, honestly. But it's fine that they only did it once. I understand they didn't want to overdo it, like they did with several mini-games that we'll be doing later that you won't see because I hate them so much. I do dislike how at the end of this elevator section, there's a pop-up that says jump off the elevator. Because I was busy reading that pop-up, so I didn't jump off the elevator in time the first time I played this game, and that really pissed me off. I feel like that pop-up was a late addition because they didn't have anyone to voice the line and they thought it was too unfair that they didn't warn you to jump off. But it had the opposite effect on me because I was too busy reading the pop-up to actually jump the fuck off. Anyway, this is one of those classic acid rising really fast so you better reach the top before it gets you sections. It's okay, I guess. You gotta jump way before you reach the ledge of each platform, that's the trick to this. But after you figure that much out, this shit is cake. Absolute cake. I don't know if the perspective would bother some people, but the leaps of faith here, perfectly warranted, because having faith in the developers in this situation is acceptable. They do not pull any sneaky bullshit. Whenever there are situations to trust the developer not to do something really stupid with the game design, generally you can trust them in this game. They do a good job about that. Anyway, we have the full set of wildfire armor, so now our wrench will catch things on fire. Mostly enemies. And that's okay, I guess. It's not really important, but it's a cool effect. It's a cool visual effect. We also leave flaming footsteps behind, which is even cooler. Commentating over this game is so weird because I'm switching so much between praising the game and saying things are wrong with it. Just like constantly, hey, this is a cool thing, but also this sucks. Just like that, over and over on loop. The intercom keeps mentioning this is a robot factory, but, you know, doesn't say anything about what the robots do, what purpose they serve, anything like that. Some kind of world building. Nothing useful. Nothing that would help the story. Nothing that would help you figure out where the fuck this is and why you're here. Like, why this place? The world building in other Ratchet & Clank games isn't exactly phenomenal. They mostly hint at things instead of directly state them. But this is barely hinting. It barely accomplishes that. All we know about this place is that it's a robot factory where robots are made. We don't know who orders the robots, we don't know who runs the factory, and we never will know. And taking this factory in context with the rest of the narrative is a disaster. An absolute disaster. You don't know why yet, but you'll figure out later when I, you know, complain about everything that's going to go wrong with the cutscenes at the end of this level. Because it puts so many things into perspective, and it's things that you really didn't want to be in perspective. Like, maybe if the game didn't try to have twists, it would have been a lot better. The swing shot platforming is okay, it controls as well as it did in the other PS2 games. It's not challenging in the slightest, but I'm way too used to the swing shot platforming at this point. So my opinion on that probably doesn't count too much. It's about as good as the swing shot platforming in Up Your Arsenal. And that's kind of sad, because they had a different kind of swing shot in Up Your Arsenal that had more functions. In this room, the enemies just come out in a straight line for you to blast the shit out of them. I don't know why. Maybe it's because this room is so small and cramped that they didn't want you running around it in circles. But yeah, the enemies just drop in a straight line for you to shoot, so you can just hold a circle. It's nothing, like, offensive about this room, it's just so weird. Like, why put enemies in the room at all, if you're gonna do it like this? I suppose we could have technically just run past the enemies and done the door unlocking grind rail section. Because there's no reason to fight the enemies in this room, you can just run past them. But maybe I was really concerned about leveling up the Lacerator, that could have been it. Did I mention I really like these grind rail sections? Because I do. It explores the grind rail mechanics core to the Ratchet franchise. Later in the game, it explores them even better than the main games, so that's really cool. And it takes the place of really stupid hacking minigames from the other games. Like, I really hated the hacking minigames in the other Ratchet games. But this is something Size Matters does exceptionally well, is exploring the grind rail mechanics, and I love it for that. Insomniac themselves seem to have some sort of weird issue exploring the grind rail mechanics properly, because even when they try to do that, like in Deadlocked, it's just so shallow. I didn't mind the grind rail sections in Deadlocked or anything, but they were just really straightforward and kind of boring. Even though they definitely tried to mix it up more than every other Ratchet game. There's no reason for me to be using the acid glove right here, by the way. Like, no reason at all. I'm just doing it because I can. On the upside, if you're tired of me complaining, we're going to be entering some really creative levels after the plot twist at the end of this level. On the downside, we're also... Oh, hold on, this room kind of rocks. So there's a maze here involving the Magna Boots. We have to find out which of these pathways actually leads to the exit by looking in our first-person mode. And that's really fucking cool. And why don't more Ratchet games do this? This is really rad. Using the Magna Boots for a disorienting maze section in a sphere room. It's like a really fucking cool set piece. It makes the Magna Boots feel like something special, and it also makes the first-person mode actually useful for something. Which is something you can't say about a lot of Ratchet games. In a lot of Ratchet games, the Magna Boots feel like an afterthought. Like a weird gimmick. But in that room, at least, and in one particular level later, they actually feel like they serve a decent platforming purpose. This assembly line, we just have to shoot the robots off the side. It's really simple. Can't imagine dying in this room for any reason. But that's okay, because the last room was rad as fuck. I think we're about to fight the boss. It's a really cool boss. It also has some fucking rad music. That boss kicks so much ass. It's really exciting and really fun and really fast. And, you know, the deadlocked bosses I think are the best bosses in Ratchet games in general. But that boss feels like it belonged in Deadlocked as an early boss, because that was just really fun shit. I consider that boss much better than Shell Shock, who is the actual first boss battle in Ratchet Deadlocked. Because, you know, it grabs a pipe out of the arena and starts trying to fucking beat you with it. And it has so many varied attacks.
Wow, thank you guys. You are so heroic. I never introduced myself. My name is Luna.
Well, Luna, we should leave before any bad guys show up.
But I haven't had a chance to tell my friends about your heroic deeds.
You mean your friends, right?
Ratchet, that is very insensitive.
No, I mean friends. They will be surprised it was so easy to capture such stupendous superheroes.
That is very good, Luna. Now try. She sells seashells by the...
Hey! He was just trying to help!
You've both been very helpful. The cameras that have been following you have captured your every move. And now, we have the information we need.
We?
Yeah, we got him. This was just too easy.
Where am I?
They must have blasted you good, soldier. You're on planet Metallis in the middle of Robot War 3.
Metallis? The last thing I remember is talking to Luna, and then...
Whew, that was a close one. You better get moving, soldier. You're gonna end up like me.
Okay, so here's the part I've been dreading. Let's go over the really fucking stupid evil bad guy plot so far. What the bad guy was trying to accomplish was the bad guy wanted Ratchet unconscious, so that way the bad guy could perform operations on Ratchet and kidnap him. So to that end, the bad guy sent a little girl decoy to interrupt Ratchet's vacation, staged the little girl getting kidnapped using his own soldiers, led Ratchet to a completely different planet than the one the little girl was on, which then led him to the planet where the little girl was. And then Ratchet and Clank fought through a bunch of robots and a giant monster of completely unknown origin that will never be explained. We never learn what those robots are for, or where that monster we just fought came from. And then, instead of killing Clank, because they don't need Clank for their plan, they dump Clank on some random planet, so Clank can find Ratchet later and inevitably free him. And it just hurts my fucking head why they wrote it like this. This is the most moronic, overly convoluted villain plot in any Ratchet game, and no, context does not make it better. The context we get later in the game makes it worse. Suffice it to say that if they really wanted to knock Ratchet unconscious, all they actually had to do was, oh hey look, some more stupid plot shit. I'm not even gonna give the cutscene the benefit of fucking itself up. Scrunch comes out of nowhere and hands Clank a plot progression device. For some reason, Scrunch has seen where Ratchet was taken. We never know how he saw that. We never know how he got this device he just handed Clank. He just appears, hands Clank the plot device, and flies off. How did Scrunch know that Ratchet was kidnapped? How did Scrunch know where he was taken to? How did Scrunch get the security footage? That's never explained. Just fuck this game's narrative so much. And now it's time to play a shit ton of minigames off screen that you thankfully don't have to watch. See you next time. Okay, but for real though, that boss fight against Mungo, that was the shit. Did you see how organically he moved around the arena, like climbing on the fucking ceiling, grabbing the pipes to beat you with, throwing the security drones at you? And he switches between attacks so quickly, he never gets a chance to get stale. And the fight is over way faster than most Ratchet and Clank bosses. So, you know, it's really good. It's really good shit. For real. Anyway, see you next time. Again. Hello everyone and welcome back to Size Matters. You're just in time because I just finished playing a bunch of mini-games I really didn't want to play, so that way we could get a new suit of armor, or pieces to a new set of armor, rather. And because Clank is inexplicably alive as the bad guys chose not to kill him for unknown reasons, we are going to go rescue Ratchet because Scrunch appeared spontaneously with a plot device that told us exactly where Ratchet is being kept. Brilliant. It's time for a new gameplay segment, by the way. This one's inoffensive, I guess. So we're flying through space as Giant Clank, and we get a sort of Star Fox-style shooty segment, 3D shoot-'em-up thingamajigger, and it's okay. It functions. The enemy types are really bland. The shooting itself is really bland. It has less depth than Star Fox 64, in spite of Star Fox 64 coming out some years ago. And I'm not saying I want or expect the Clank shoot-'em-up segments to be of the same quality as Star Fox 64, because Star Fox 64 is incredibly high quality and is very well designed. But the mechanics here are really sparse. You have a basic shot, and after you shoot enough enemies, you get some rockets, and you can press the rocket button to shoot more powerful rocket shots. It's just kind of what you're seeing is what you get. I don't have a real problem with this segment because it's short and it adds variety to the game, in a game all about adding variety. But it is very indicative of the problem that all the minigames in this game have, aside from the hoverboarding one, in that all the minigames are just very plain and uncreative. Like, going to space as Giant Clank and engaging in a shoot-'em-up segment, that should be creative, and I'm sure the intention was for it to be creative. But the execution has to be creative, not just the idea. And the execution of this minigame we're doing right now is just, it's okay. It's exceedingly average. The most challenging thing about this entire minigame are the sections where you have to dodge through tight spaces that aren't actually as tight as they look because of the perspective. I think that's kind of cool. I don't know if the trick with the perspective is intentional, but it feels good to dodge through such tight spaces even though they're not actually as tight as they appear. I have a real thing for threading the needle, which is why I play driving games so much. And, you know, I guess this taps into that just a bit. Not enough for me to recommend the entire segment based on that alone, but considering this is the only mandatory Giant Clank segment in the game, and it lasts for, like, what, 4 minutes? It's not a big deal. The segment's alright. I feel like maybe this game would have been better as just a string of loosely connected levels with no ongoing plot. I think that would have been a better decision in the end, because the story builds there's so much potential in the story that goes absolutely nowhere, and it's just really depressing. I don't know if overambition was the issue, but the story has so many moving pieces that don't need to be there, and it has so many unmoving pieces that need to be moving. It's really weird. Like, the idea of the Technomites is really cool, and when I first played this game I was hoping we would learn more about Technomite society and what the Technomites do, how they work, what kind of technology they build, who uses the technology, how they get the technology from the Technomites. Never really comes up. The start of the game builds them up like there's some sort of mythological thing that makes all technology work, but that's blatantly not the case, because there's plenty of technology that functions without their interference. So you never really learn what they do or what they're for. We just know they build things. What things they build, why they build them, and, you know, any other questions you might have regarding interesting things, those never get answered. It's such a wasted concept, and I get they wanted to do something with size because, you know, it's a portable game. I get they thought they were being cute and clever. And I'm sure there is a way to make the Technomites work as a concept. But whoever wrote this game did not do that. The other Ratchet games seem to kind of ignore that this one exists, though, which I think is probably for the better because the weird side plot involving Quark's parents and the Technomites just really feel completely out of place with the rest of Ratchet & Clank's world building and tone. This game's tone in general doesn't feel very Ratchet & Clank. The closest thing to a reference for this game that I can remember in other Ratchet & Clank games is the Grungoth in Full Frontal Assault, which bears a resemblance and similar attack pattern to Mungo, even though Mungo is way better. You know, as much as I talk down about this game's story, which is really bad, and this game's minigames, which are completely inoffensive but very boring, I really do like this game quite a lot, and I do think it's a console-quality game. It even does some things better than the main Ratchet games. It does some things better than Insomniac, you know? And that's to be proud of. Mungo is a great boss battle with a lot of momentum. Some of the level designs, level gimmicks, and gadgets are really creative and fun and feel like they're from a really inventive, completely separate 3D platformer that's in no way related to Ratchet & Clank. I kind of think that's when this game is at its best, really, is when it's just being a 3D platformer that feels nothing like Ratchet & Clank, aside from having Ratchet & Clank characters and a Ratchet & Clank control scheme. And that sort of thing gets more and more apparent as the game goes on and we get into some more of the weirder level designs and weirder gimmicks. This boss is not nearly as hard as I'm making it look, by the way. I'm just being really impatient, and that's why I'm getting hit so goddamn much. It's really easy to just take pot shots at it and not get hit at all, but I'm being really impatient because I want the boss to be over sooner.
You're going to need a bigger scalpel, Doctor. Oh, there, big guy. We're just getting started. Now, if you don't like the sight of blood, you might want to close your eyes.
It is okay, Ratchet. You can come in. It is safe inside this door.
Oh hey, it's time for some of that weird shit. So, Ratchet's hallucinating rather vividly because he is all doped up on some sort of alien drug substance we have no idea what is. And you can see here we have some new armor parts that we won from minigames. And we can use those to enhance Ratchet's damage reduction. You know, enhanced damage reduction sounds a little weird to say, but I guess that's technically what we're doing. Anyway, we mixed and matched our armor parts, so now we're ready to go. I know a lot of people have issues with the border in this level, they think it's kind of distracting and disorienting. I actually quite like the border with this level. I like the way the colors bleed into it, but I could understand it bothering someone. There are some enemy types unique to this level. There are flying syringe bats and some special enemy type we'll see quite later. We can also make use of our normal gadgets and mechanics in this level, though some of them do unexpected things. For example, we'll water this mimic plant and plant it as we normally do, but it will become a special kind of plant that we don't get anywhere else. The rare cork plant. And the cork plant turns into swing shot targets. That is the function of the cork plant. You know, Ratchet sure thinks about Captain Quark a lot. I'm not gonna theorize on what that means about his mental state, but he sure does think about Captain Quark a lot. Anyway, these giant eyeballs with red lights. They seem to have the capacity to kill you if they look directly at you for too long, but I've never been able to figure out what exactly triggers the death while they're looking at you. Maybe it's when the borders of the screen turn all red. Back when I first played this game on the PSP, this is kind of what sold me on it. What made me want to keep playing it to the finish was this level, because this is just so weird. And if the developers could come up with weird shit like this, I wanted to see what other weird shit they had in store. Nothing else this weird, mind you, but things that are better. There are better levels than this one. Not as weird, but better. There are some creative platforming hazards and mechanics in this level that I wouldn't quite put on par with later levels, but the atmosphere is half of the fun here. Alright, it's time for the second unique enemy type of this level, if we get rid of these syringe bats. It's Dr. Quark, and he throws chainsaws at us. We simply need to strafe left or right to avoid them as they go forward at us. They're not particularly hard attacks to dodge. Mostly, they're only challenging when you have very limited room to move, or there are multiple Quarks throwing multiple chainsaws at you from different angles. I do appreciate the inclusion of giant eyeballs instead of normal death searchlights, but at the same time, why giant eyeballs? I get they're going for a trippy aesthetic, but couldn't it have been something more Ratchet and Clanky? This is really cool. These chainsaws chop up the platform, and then different Dr. Quarks appear on the slices of platform. It's still not particularly hard to dodge the Dr. Quark chainsaws, but you do have to be careful not to fall into the pits between platforms while you're strafing, because that is a legitimate concern, especially in the PSP version. It's not as bad here. Oh cool, our lacerator has reached full capacity, and now there are 2 of them. That's nice and everything, but the lacerators still aren't quite at full firepower. We still need to buy the double barrel mod for them, which will be 4 barrels in total, because there are 2 lacerators. So that'll be quite damaging for a while, but toward the end game it won't be enough by itself. Already mentioned the swing shot platforming. Very simple, very forgiving, about on par with the swing shot platforming in Up Your Arsenal. This section can be tough if you're not patient, but if you just wait for the eyeballs to start turning before you run through, you'll be fine. I died here a lot because I didn't understand how the eyeballs worked at first, and I still kind of don't.
Ratchet! Ratchet! Come on, Ratchet, wake up! You must wake up. There is still so much to do. I knew something was odd about that Luna girl. This is all my fault.
Not to interrupt your pity party, Clank, but how is this your fault? How is any of this your fault? Did I miss something? Because I don't think either you or Ratchet are really at fault here. I get that you're trying to add some drama to a situation that's kind of missing drama, at least personal drama. By the way, the closer we get to this mirror, the closer these syringe bats get to flying out of said mirror. And if we shatter the mirror, more syringe bats appear. Really trippy visual. Really nice, too. It definitely took me by surprise the first time I played the game. Freaked me out a little bit. This whole level freaked me out a little bit the first time I played this game. Not so much now. I have a very low tolerance for horror things, but even I don't think this level's all that bad. Mostly because I consider it more wacky than creepy, especially in context with the really bad story that has a strange tone that's just all over the place. But yeah, if someone could help me out here, I can't imagine how Clank arrived at the conclusion that any of this was his fault. So if someone could help me with that, maybe there's something I missed, but I don't really think this is anyone's fault. Here we're going to fight Dr. Quark in his best element when we have very limited room to dodge. Fortunately, we can kill him very quickly with our double lacerator. So it's just a matter of finding him and locking on in time. I won't deny that this whole level must have taken quite a bit of coordination and creativity on the part of the developers. Because it's one thing to have an idea like, oh, Ratchet has a drug-addled trip through his mind while he's on the operation table. You know, it's fine to have that idea. Anyone can have that idea. But actually putting it into effect, that's something else entirely. So I applaud them for actually going so far as to put the idea into action. Because I imagine it was kind of hard to sell that. Or maybe this is one of those weird situations where absolutely everybody involved in the development process just agreed. Everybody agreed it was a good idea to have a weird trippy level with a strange filter where you fight Dr. Quarks. And I think it's important to appreciate how hard it is to pull off weird shit like this when you're working for a company as big as Sony, and you have these really strict deadlines, and you're working with a well-established franchise. But they went and did this anyway. Then again, high-impact games seem to have been founded specifically to make this game, so maybe Sony had a lot of faith in the developers. I don't know exactly who the people are that were involved in this development studio are, and what connection they had with Sony before this development studio was started. So maybe they built up quite a bit of goodwill. You can hide behind the Clank parts if you're having issue dodging the Dr. Quark chainsaws, but I don't think they're that hard to strafe around. High-impact games also made Jak and Daxter The Lost Frontier and Secret Agent Clank, so it feels like they were specifically made to do spin-offs of Sony's really popular platforming franchises. Unfortunately, they were too late to make Daxter. You know, I never did get around to actually playing The Lost Frontier, so I kind of wonder how it turned out. I know it came out on the PSP and PS2 simultaneously, but I kind of wonder which version was the primary version, so to speak, which one was considered first. I'm going to guess the PSP version based on the developer's history, and from what I've heard about the game, it seems like it wasn't made with the PS2's limitations in mind. Like, they could have done more with the world and the sound and visual design than they actually did. For the PS2, I mean. I also wonder if the PS2 version looks better, because the PS2 version of Size Matters definitely looks better than the PSP version, but since the PSP and PS2 version of The Lost Frontier came out at the same time, maybe they look nearly identical. They were in development in tandem, after all. It kind of feels weird to talk about developers dedicated to making spin-offs of really popular franchises. Like, you know, Size Matters is probably the biggest part of High Impact Games' legacy. I mean, I don't know how anyone felt about Secret Agent Clank. I've never heard anyone say anything about the Secret Agent Clank video game, but that being said, I remember there being quite a bit of hype and positive reception in Size Matters' case. For this part of the level, we just have to survive Giant Clank until the game decides that we've survived long enough. Giant Clank has a few attacks, none are very threatening. He can create a shockwave of butterflies, we can just jump over the butterflies. He can throw grenades made of butterflies, we just walk to the left to avoid those. it's really nothing to be concerned about. Obviously, we do want to stay as far away from him as possible because if he steps on us, that will hurt quite a lot, and we will die shortly if that happens. So let's try to keep our distance. There are a couple of times you could be in danger of actually running off the platform, but you can easily readjust yourself to keep walking in a circle around him. This is a very lenient boss, if you want to call it a boss. It's mostly just for spectacle's sake, I think, because there's not really any fighting going on. The attacks aren't hard to dodge, and the platforming is very minimal. So I think it's just supposed to look cool. Which I guess it does, you know, this is alright. People like Giant Clank. I'm a little upset this wasn't a giant Quark instead, to keep with the theme of Ratchet thinking way too much about Quark. But I guess things can't be perfect. This game is a good example of things not being perfect, even though I really like this level and don't really have anything bad to say about it.
You must wake up. There is still so much to do. I knew something was odd about that Luna girl. This is all my fault.
Hey, it wasn't your fault. I'm just too stubborn sometimes.
You can hear me?
Yeah, you're standing right here.
Nice to have you back.
Where are we?
We were both double-crossed by Luna. I do not know why she did it, but I saw a video of you undergoing some tests. They were extracting something from you.
That's weird. I've got a major headache, but other than that, I feel okay.
Well, if we are going to get to the bottom of this, the first thing we need to do is get out of here and find Luna.
That's okay, Clank. I'll handle this one.
I think you got him, Ratchet.
I'm just getting started.
Hey, I know I've complained about the story a lot, but still I have to point... There's my cat in my microphone. I know I've complained about the story a lot, but I have to complain about something again. How did Clank get in here without running into any of the security bots? How did he get past this locked door? Now, I know nothing is perfect, okay? I know every narrative has its flaws, but this is really, like, really basic stuff here. Like, thinking, how did this character get into this room? That's really just simple. I'm not trying to be mean, but I'm having such a hard time understanding how the writers or writer wrote it this way, to where nothing seems to make any sense, and the plot has horrible pacing, and there's so little cohesion in the way the characters behave. And anyway, this level's alright. It's pretty standard as far as Ratchet and Clank levels go, but I think it has some entertaining diversions and things worth remembering, such as some actually nice turret segments. It takes a bit to get to those turret segments though, so let's talk about something I mentioned in an earlier video. I brought up a comparison to Star Fox 64 when I was doing the Clank segment, and someone in my comments pointed out that's not entirely fair. And I agree, comparing a minigame section in size matters to Star Fox 64 really is not fair. But the point I was trying to get across, and I didn't get it across very well, is that they should have had some sort of secondary mechanic in play if they were planning to make the enemy design so simple and require so little thought. I was thinking of Star Fox 64 as like a lock-on mechanics, for example. I feel like including a simple lock-on mechanic or some kind of homing shot, or, you know, anything that rewards the player for more strategic thinking would have been a good idea. Now on to other business. You can actually mix and match armor set parts to create special bonuses I wasn't aware of. I thought you needed all the parts in one specific matching armor set to get bonuses, like the Crystallix armor we're wearing some of right now. If we get all of the Crystallix armor, our wrench will shoot crystals. What I didn't know is that you can mix and match armor sets to get abilities. Like someone pointed out, you can use the sledge helmet with the wildfire armor and get a special ability that way. That is an obscene amount of effort for a mechanic that you probably won't use on a casual run. So props to High Impact Games for that, because the armor system has way more depth than I realized. Anyway, this is one of those turret sections I was talking about. I actually find these to be quite good. They increase in difficulty as the level goes on. These little robot guys take 2 shots to go down. The first shot only freezes them. The second shot actually destroys them, which means that you have to multitask in a way that not a lot of other turret minigames require, because it's an ice turret and not just a shooty-shoot turret. So yeah, there are robots coming from all directions toward Ratchet, and you need to be able to shoot them down, but you also need to keep track of which ones are frozen, which ones are unfrozen, and how many hits you've given a specific robot. It's a neat take on the overused turret minigame, and I like that you can't just spam the shots. The fact that the robots come from above and below adds another element to the multitasking as well. I understand why it would bother some people, because they probably didn't want to play a multitasking minigame in the middle of their third-person platformer shooter, but I quite like the design of these, and I think it adds some variety and character to the level. Now back to some other things that are still related to the game, but not necessarily related to what you're seeing on screen. I really love Size Matters as a subtitle, because, first of all, it's a portable game, so that's instantly a good reason to call it Size Matters. Oh, well, hold on. This room right here is actually the room that gives me the most trouble in the level. And that's not really due to the room layout or anything like that, so much as it is, there are always more enemies that come out than I expect. Just keep strafe jumping and you'll be fine, basically. It's what you do. Anyway, Size Matters works really well because it's a portable game. And it works well because it's a sexual pun, which is something that that Ratchet and Clank is somewhat fond of. And it works well because Size Matters also means matters pertaining to size. You know, matters of size. Size Matters. So it's definitely my favorite Ratchet and Clank title, by far. Not my favorite game, but as far as subtitles go, yeah, this is a pretty good one. So now the bigger robots get shields provided by the medic robots hanging around behind them, and we have to shoot the medic robots to disable the shields. All this really boils down to, though, is more strafe jumping. Yeah, you have to kill the medic robots first to disable the shields, but there's so many explosions and there's so much jumping going on, you're not even likely to notice until everything's dead. Like, I barely paid any attention to the shield mechanic while I was playing, and I still did fine. That's not to say the shield mechanic is unappreciated, because it does add more variety to the game mechanics and enemy types. It also shows the robots working together in a more coherent fashion than you normally see in this game. I wouldn't have noticed if the shield mechanic was missing. I often forget it's even a thing, but I still think it's good that it exists, if that makes sense. It's an indicator that they tried. They were trying to give variety to the enemy types and increase the challenge. And the game does have increasing challenge, just not because the enemies have shields now. It's time for another Clank turret section, and it ramps up in difficulty in a way you would probably expect. There are more robots coming from more directions. You need to switch planes more often between top and bottom. It's generally just more hectic. Now, I realize these turret segments aren't going to sell the game to anyone, but I think it shows High Impact Games' dedication to making this game feel like a well-rounded platform adventure. Like, these turret segments are unique to the medical outpost, and they're here because they can't really include any of the other mechanics that are normally used for variety. Like, they can't use the mimic plants here, and the swing shot until recently was taken away from Ratchet. And the main reason I remember the medical outpost is even a level is because this is the level with the Clank turret segments. Now, you could count Ratchet's Dream as part of the medical outpost level if you really wanted to, but I really don't think it counts. The game counts it as a separate level if you go back and replay them. A lot of things this game does reminds me of PlayStation 2 era platformers and how they were obsessed with creating variety, sometimes through minigames and sometimes through a constant stream of new mechanics. And I always got the impression that bothered a lot of people. You know, things like new minigames, vehicle segments, transformations, things like that. Anything to keep the variety going through the entire adventure. I always got the impression things like that kind of bothered people. Like, even when I bring up really classic platformers like, say, Sly Cooper, people bring up the turret shooting segments or the driving segments as something they quite dislike and they felt it broke the pacing of the game. But the thing is, I don't have any, like, intense opinions on that. Like, I think minigames are fine if they're done well. You just saw me praising the turret segment back there. As long as the minigames are well made and make the game feel like a well-rounded adventure, then I don't mind, because that's what they're for. But, like, what about you guys? Because I'm sure all of you, or maybe most of you, have played some PlayStation 2 era 3D platformers, because there were a lot of those. Were the vehicle segments and minigames and new mechanics, like, a point of frustration for you on the regular? Were you ambivalent towards them? Did you look forward to them? I think one PlayStation 2 platformer in particular got a lot of unnecessary flack for the inclusion of minigames and new mechanics. That would be Haven Call of the King, which I personally think is a creative masterpiece, and it deserved way more praise than it got. But that game introduces a new stream of mechanics non-stop. New vehicles, new... Like, there's a point where you're in a jetpack spraying out fires.
What is this place?
I believe it is a laboratory of some sort.
Nobody messes with me like this.
We must leave before it is too late.
Cool, we have collected the full set of Crystallix armor, which now means that our wrench will shoot crystals, which is actually more useful than it sounds. Now, shoot may be a little misleading. I don't mean it literally shoots crystals like projectiles, but if we ground slam, crystals will appear and deal a large amount of damage to enemies, which is incredibly helpful, especially if you're running out of ammunition. Don't pay any mind to the timer, by the way. Timer's pointless, just forget it's there. Unless you just fight really, really slowly, then you may have issues with the timer. Feels weird that there's a Clank turret segment while the timer's counting down, because these have a fixed amount of time to be completed. Anyway, what was I talking about before? Yeah, Haven, Call of the King. I was honestly shocked at how creative that game was from a visual standpoint, from a storytelling standpoint, world-building standpoint, and a gameplay standpoint, even though that's the part most people get hung up on, is that there was maybe too much gameplay variety, a bit too much switching things up. But yeah, going back and playing it, it's clear Haven was meant to be a big one, if not the big one, for Traveler's Tales. And it's easy to see why. A lot of heart was put into that game, more so than I think most games. And I think most games have a lot of heart put into them. The level of dedication and care to creating a universe in that game, that was just heartwarming to me. I hope you're starting to see why I like this game. You know, it's a good 3D platformer. It's not a great shooter, but it's a good 3D platformer adventure game. It has decent variety. The levels look nice. The armor is a creative and fun mechanic, even if getting the armor through minigames is a little bit irritating. The minigames would be much less bothersome if they were more like the turret minigame. Like if they felt like natural extensions of the adventure as opposed to just something you have to do if you want better armor. Here's the final room in the level. It can be a doozy. There's a lot of stuff shooting at you at once. I died more than a few times in this room. The advice I can give you is don't try and be overly smart about it. There's no point to that. Just blast away until they go down, And remember that the enemies have shields. Wait for them to move out of the corners they're backed into before you fire at them. Unless you have ammo to spare, then just fire like mad. Unfortunately, we do not have ammo to spare, as we only have 2 guns currently. So what we're going to do is back up for a bit, and take a breather, and then we're going to go in there and kill everything with our new Crystallix-powered wrench. Because even though we have no more firepower, thanks to our Crystallix armor, we can totally wreck these guys just by doing ground slams next to them. This is one of few situations where the armor actually proves to be a lifesaver instead of just a really cool idea. Again, I do think the armor is a great idea conceptually, and obviously it's more fully realized than I initially thought, but it would be better if they gave you more armor quicker so you could do more experimenting with it on your first run.
This station is about to explode. We must leave now.
Here it is. Luna's last entry.
The tests are complete, Emperor Otto. I'm headed to the city with the package now.
Excellent. Are you sure the contents are perfect?
Quite sure. We created one subject, and it took 26 of our best warriors to destroy it. How are things coming on your project?
I planted the fake evidence. Quark's weak mind is so easy to manipulate.
I will contact you when the delivery is completed. Luna, out.
I have the coordinates. Okay, here's the deal. I got these 2 identical skyboards for us to use, right? We'll race one more time to prove who's the best. Is that a polarizer attached to your dark matter acceleration module? Whoa, so it is. Man, I never really noticed it before. So what do you think, Runt? You want to give it another go? I'll give you the polarizer if you beat me.
So welcome to the second mandatory hoverboard race, and surprisingly, they already built a hoverboard track out of the remains of the medical outpost we just blew up. That shows quite a large level of resourcefulness, and I have to wonder where this Chester Cheeto cereal box mascot guy with all these weird gadgets came from, if he's able to put things like this together so quickly. I mean, these boost pads just don't appear out of thin air, right? Anyway, this is the track where you can pretty much boost over the entire track, and there are a lot of alternate pathways to take. There are so many that can be a bit confusing, especially once we get past these walled off sections and get into the level proper, or race proper, rather. As soon as we get past these walled off sections, we're met immediately with a bunch of branching up and down pathways, these slopes right here. And it can be unclear which way is the best way to go, where you want to go, or if you've started, flying backwards. But don't worry about it too much. As long as you're still grabbing boost fuel and you haven't started going backwards on the map, you're still probably going in the right direction. And once we do get out of this twisty-turny clusterfuck, we get onto the part of the race where we can start boosting over the entire track without any penalty whatsoever. And it's really good. You're supposed to do some minor platforming after you get out of this twisty clusterfuck, but if you've built up enough boost, you can just fly over so much of it that it's a non-issue. Like, you don't even have to worry about most of the obstacles here. It's really entirely optional if you want to bother, or if you just want to fly over everything. It is possible to boost so far to the right here that the game registers you as dead, but it also registers that you've passed the lap, and that's a really easy way to glitch the game out. Give you credit for passing the lap even though you didn't really cross the finish line, and you in fact just went so far out of bounds that you died. So that's fun. This track is what I was talking about when I was saying the course design gets really crazy maybe a little hard to follow, but definitely encourages use of the mid-air boost mechanic. Maybe a little too much, but I think having a hoverboard section this crazy and unique definitely helps size matters, because these hoverboard sections are my favorite minigame in the game, and there are a lot of minigames in this video game, so you know, these hoverboard sections are some of my favorite parts. I do think it's good you only have to do 2 of them, because I could see a lot of people being alienated by the floaty controls and really weird course design that, as you're seeing, can be quite confusing, because at times you can have no idea where you're going, and there are so many things that you can easily boost over, you wonder whether you're breaking the game or not, and maybe you are, but that's not important. I like these hoverboard sections, I understand why other people don't, but this is the last one we're doing either way. And we're going to get a really plot-important gadget for it that will lead to some of my favorite gimmick puzzles in the game. Gimmick platforming, a little bit of both. But yes, I think the hoverboard sections are fun and cool, and if you want to do more of them, there are more to do. We're just only doing the ones necessary for the story. And I'm cutting out the other minigames because I don't like them very much. And they aren't necessary for the story, technically. Only the hoverboard minigame is technically necessary for the story.
This stupid piece of junk never worked right anyway. It makes magnets change polarity so that they either push or pull when you... Never mind. Thank you, sir.
This doesn't look too hospitable. Maybe they put in false coordinates to throw us off the trail.
Wait, do not throw that.
Whoa, look at this. It's a hover car. Good eyes, pal. I was about to toss our only hope halfway across the planet.
So here we are on the Technomite homeworld, and this is one of the best wrist levels because there's a whole lot of fun. Oh, we bought the PDA, by the way, so we can get ammo whenever we want without having to stop at a vendor. Anyway, this is one of the best wrist levels because of all of the cool set pieces and platforming here. And since this is the Technomite home planet, you may figure, hey, we're going to learn more about the Technomites finally. We're not. I'm sorry to break that to you, but outside of this level being really fucking awesome from a gameplay standpoint, there's not a lot here. You know, we're not going to learn anything special about Technomite culture. We're not going to learn why the Technomites do what they do, where the extent of their power over technology ends or begins. We're just going to do some cool platforming, fight a mini-boss, and then leave. So, sorry about that. When I first played this game and got to this level, two things came to my mind. Firstly, wow, these grind rail sections are getting really crazy. And secondly, did I miss something? When were the Technomites established just to be bad guys that we should kill? But then again, you know, we just started killing some innocent robots in the first level, so maybe in this particular game Ratchet's just an unapologetic murderer. Never mind that we are strange people that showed up on this planet with some sort of seemingly hostile agenda, you know, breaking and entering and whatnot. I just want to frame how stupid this is in context. Like, Coming to their home planet itself to get answers is not a bad idea. But coming to their home planet and killing them and fucking everyone up and fucking up their entire, you know, whatever this is, their luggage system, fucking this up and killing that dude. That's probably why they're gonna kill us now. For all they knew, we were here peacefully. But now that we killed that guy with luggage, they're gonna slaughter us. And they have every right to. We never really hold any conversations with any of the average technomites. What happened was, some technomites experimented on us, so we decided to come to their home planet to look for answers, killed a dude with luggage, and now they assume we're hostile, so we're gonna kill them all. I feel like we're skipping over some sort of rationalization for this murder we're currently doing. Like, if someone kidnapped you and experimented on you, and they were of a different race than you, would you immediately assume that whole race was at fault? Or just a person who kidnapped and experimented on you and who's working with them? Because Ratchet seems to have immediately assumed that the whole Technomite race is at fault, and we need to kill all of them because they are all guilty. Look at that smile on his face, that fucking genocidal smile. We are non-discriminately killing all the Technomites we come across. Look at this is a city. There are people that live here. We're just slaughtering these Technomites like animals. You know, they probably have no idea who we are or why we're here. They might not know about anything that happened to us. All they know is that we showed up, killed a guy, killed several more guys, and now we're invading their city. I feel like their response is entirely justified. Never mind that even if they were working with Luna, they could have been fed propaganda, and they could be fighting us under false pretenses. Like we may have been able to talk this out with them, but we came in guns blazing. God, we're just the worst. I'm sorry, I wasn't supposed to spend this whole level talking about how stupid the story is. I was supposed to point out how cool the architecture is. There's some new enemy types that inexplicably have wrenches. It would be cool to figure out why they have wrenches and how that factors into their daily lives. But their daily lives have ended now. We have put an end to their living. Period. This room we're in right here has the distinction of seeming way harder than it actually is. At first I got the impression we were supposed to escort this mimic plant across the room while we were being attacked by Technomites. But no, you're just supposed to fight the Technomites, kill all of them, and then move the mimic plant after they're all dead. The reason I got the impression this was an escort mission was because a lot of Technomites spawned, so I just assumed they spawned infinitely until we got the mimic plant where it needs to be. But that is not the case. Also, you may notice the enemies are taking an obscene amount of hits and not suffering any meaningful knockback. That's something that really threw me for a loop when I got this far in the game the first time, because I was like, why aren't the enemies taking knockback from my shots? I literally have 4 barrels aimed at them and I'm blasting away. It just feels kind of weird, the shooting in this game. I was gonna say I'm sure it's not the worst third-person shooting, but I don't know, because every third-person shooter I've played beside this one had better aiming and better feedback for hitting enemies. There's just so little feedback for when you properly hit an enemy and are dealing damage to them, and they take way too long to kill. Even games with more enemies to kill generally felt more satisfying. Also, this is kind of cool. Knocking down the statue to use as a platform. Again, just completely desecrating their city and everything they hold dear, with little to no reason. But if you've played a third-person shooter that you feel had less satisfying shooting than this, I want to know. It's kind of hard to get across the shooting just by watching someone, but still. I don't know, this game gives me so many weird feelings. Whenever I see a grind rail section, I'm like, hell yes, look at all these grind rails, look at all this platforming. Look at how more complex this is getting. I mean, there's just so much to the grind rail sections in this game. And yeah, almost all of it is Twitch-based. But there are some genuine mazes later in the game, and they do some creative things with the switching of rails that regular Ratchet and Clank just doesn't do. And, like, so when I see a grind rail section, I'm like, hell yes, a grind rail section. When I see some weird platforming gimmicks, I'm like, hell yes, weird platforming gimmicks. Because that's the cool part. But when I see third-person shooting, the thing people most associate with Ratchet and Clank, I'm like, I don't want to do any more of this. Oh, by the way, when you lose a grind rail section, you just get booted out. Nothing really bad happens. I suppose the combat technically works, you know, the guns function as intended. The better guns do more damage and kill enemies quicker. There's a variety of enemy types. The enemies take more hits as the game goes on and deal more damage as the game goes on. But none of it really feels meaningful because I'm doing the same thing at the end of the game that I was at the beginning, and not in a good way. You know, there are some games that can get away with that. There are a lot of Muso games where you're doing the same thing the entire game, but it's so satisfying to do the same thing the entire game that it doesn't matter. But in this game's case, the shooting I don't even feel as satisfying. There is not significant feedback for killing enemies, and the rewards you get for killing enemies is nearly non-existent. I mean, my favorite parts of the game are things you don't really get any immediate tangible reward for, like the platforming and the weird puzzle gimmicks and stuff like that. You don't get any sort of immediate tangible reward you can use somewhere. You don't get additional bolts, your gun doesn't level up more, you don't get more armor parts, you know, nothing like that. But I still find that to be the most fun part of the game. The things you do get rewards for, like the shooting and the minigames, I don't like so much. So what I'm saying is that maybe rewards just didn't have to factor into this at all, and maybe this game could be better if the shooting were just better. I really should be talking about the Technomite enemy types and how they differ, and how you should best tackle the situations they're presented in, but I really don't feel like it, because all I do in this game is jump left or right and fire, with the exception of the boss fights, which can be pretty cool, as was discussed when we were fighting Mungo. Oh, it's almost time for some really cool set pieces and really cool platforming. The stuff I think of when I think of this level. Right up here. We're so close. See those leaves? See this ship? This is the good stuff. We're about to get to the good stuff in this level. So it's established this thing can fuck up platforms. We don't want to stand on one platform too long. But it can also fuck up these leaves. And we don't want to stand in the leaves that are on fire, for obvious reasons. The platforming on these flowers can be a little difficult, especially with the physics when you bounce on them. The best thing I can tell you about this whole section is to jump with certainty, jump with faith in yourself, do not hesitate. Because even as the platforms get smaller and harder to jump on, hesitating means you will fuck up for sure. Be certain of your jump arc. Just keep going as fast as you can. I love how even though this section is so short, they keep introducing new elements to it, like these towers falling down in addition to the leaves catching fire. It just keeps getting crazier and crazier, even though this section only lasts like, what, a minute and a half? It's really fun and crazy, and it's the most memorable part of the level by far. This is the stuff you might think of when you think of a Ratchet and Clank game where you play as a mini Ratchet and Clank. Cool stuff like that. It's already over, though. But then again, the level itself is pretty much over. We just have a mini-boss to go to. I would say that bit of platforming we just did is a pretty nice climax to the level, honestly. And down here is the mini-boss against a Technomite dropship. We just gotta shoot at it a bunch until it dies. There are enemies that spawn at the sides, but they are of non-importance. They are completely negligible. We can just keep firing at the dropship with our not lacerator. What's it called? It doesn't matter. Is it called the lacerator? Yes, okay. We can keep firing at the dropship with our lacerator until it goes down and jump over its really basic projectile attack. Or you could probably just tank the hits if you wanted to. It really doesn't matter. It dies fast. This game is so weird. It feels so weird commentating over this game because I have such mixed feelings on it. And sometimes I'm talking about it like it's the worst. And other times I'm like, look at how cool this is, and I don't know how to feel.
There she is! Let's get her!
Ratchet, do you notice anything unusual about Luna?
Well, she does seem to have an unusually large door in the back of her head.
And why do you suppose that is?
She's, robot?
Correct. I believe the Technomites set us up from the beginning. What I do not know is why.
Yeah? Well, I bet those technomites inside her head know why, and now I'm gonna find out.
It appears we will have to catch her first.
Alright, now that we've completed more Clank challenges, it's time for a really, really cool level that shows off more of what Size Matters is best at. That being the level gimmicks, the platforming, and the really cool level design. This right here is Dayni Moon. And in addition to, well, being a little different from most Ratchet & Clank locations in that it's a farm, Dayni Moon will have quite a few level unique gimmicks that you probably wouldn't expect to see in a series primarily known for being a third-person shooter. Really, Dayni Moon as a location and level feels more like it's from an entirely different platformer with no relation to Ratchet & Clank. But I don't consider that a bad thing because I think the platforming is what Size Matters does best. The shooting is also not as bad here, because this level seems primarily focused on the platforming, even though it does have a really hard boss. So the main gimmick behind Dayni Moon is that it switches between day and night rather rapidly, and when it switches to night, the normally innocent sheep turn into monster sheep that will attack you, which is why I just obliterated them ahead of time, because otherwise they would destroy us. We do want the shock rocket. It's going to be very important to fight the final boss with, that's why we bought it. Going to want to level that up as much as possible as quickly as possible. You may notice we also have new armor from playing minigames off screen. But yeah, as I said, the gimmick to Dayni Moon is that it switches between day and night rather quickly. As you see, it just switched to night, which means these sheep will now attack us, as they are now monster sheep. It also makes for quite a nice and sudden visual change that I really appreciate. You can see the monster sheep inside there. The monster sheep are also a really fun enemy because they don't require too many hits to go down, and they're a fun gimmick and look nice in general. Hopefully you can see what I mean about this level seeming more like it's from a completely different platformer with no relation to Ratchet & Clank. The farm aesthetic, the gimmick of it switching between day and night and the sheep turning into monsters, the puzzle solving mostly reliant on watering plants and turning them into platforms, just doesn't feel very Ratchet & Clanky, but I think that's good for this game given that this developer hasn't really done the best job with the shooting in this game. The optional areas in this level are also a lot more fun to reach than the optional areas in the other levels. So I think that's even better, you know? It goes a long way toward making it feel like a platformer, as opposed to a shooter, which it is a bad one of those. It's not a very good shooter. It may surprise you to know that this is the third to last level in the game. This is the second to last planet in the game. It just seems like such a weird choice for the second to last planet. Like, you know, you go track Luna down on the Technomite homeworld. Here's one of the extra areas, by the way. Like I said, they're more fun to get to in this planet. But anyway, you know, from a narrative standpoint, you track Luna down to the Technomite homeworld, you figure that's where you'll confront Luna, but no. Luna blasts off to a nearby moon, a nearby Farming Moon, with a weird platforming gimmick that feels like it's from a completely different game series. And that's where you confront her. And it's also the second to last planet in the entire game. It's such a weird choice for a location this late in the game. Like, you figure this would be a much earlier location. This location is also where I got stuck for the longest time when I played this on the PSP. The shock rocket is great, by the way, because it arcs electricity between targets so it hurts multiple. It's most useful against a single target, as we'll see, but that's also very helpful. Anyway, I got stuck here for the longest time when I first played this on PSP, because the boss is pretty brutal, and I just didn't have the patience for the ass controls in the PSP version. The boss is much less terrible and hard in this version of the game. This upcoming area right here has demon sheep that spawn infinitely, well, not infinitely, but spawn, let's try this again. This area right here has demon sheep that spawn out of these hay bales, and we have to get rid of all the demon sheep before proceeding, otherwise they'll get us in the ass while we try to move forward with the platforming. It's alright, you know, being attacked from all sides from sheep that spawn out of hay bales. It's a unique situation, maybe not gameplay-wise, but, you know, how often does something like this happen? It's just so weird. It feels like it's from some other PS2-era platformer. But looking at it from a game design standpoint, it's alright. You just turn the camera around in a circle and hold lock on until you find what you're trying to shoot. So it's nothing super special. But the shooting is better when it's simple, like this, and wedged between platforming. Because the platforming is the stuff you look forward to. Right, it is now day, we have survived the onslaught, and we can resume platforming. The best platforming in the game, in fact. That's not to say it's great or anything, but it makes really fun use of the mimic plants. And, as far as 3D platforming goes, you know, it's better than average, you know? You gotta press the X button at just the right time on these bouncy flowers, you gotta make good use of the hover mechanic. For how limited the platforming mechanics in this game are, it makes really good use of its gimmicks and the hover ability. Like, it actually requires genuine skill to platform through here, in addition to the gimmicks just being fun and unique for this level. As soon as we land, we're going to have to go on the offensive immediately because these guys, as you see, are just waiting here to wreck our shit. I like this area for combat because having this big building in the center to move around makes it a lot more fun to fight these guys. Anyway, as I was saying about the platforming, it's not going to blow you away or anything. It's not like super impressive, it's not the height of 3D platforming design. But it makes use of the very limited mechanics even if it does not explore them completely. And it doesn't outstay its welcome, most importantly. The platforming in this game never gets repetitive, unlike the shooting. You know, they use the gimmicks, I think I've already said it at least once, but they don't overuse the gimmicks, they use them just the right amount. You know, it's so weird, just a bit ago I recall complaining about how Monster High was using plants as bouncy platforms. This game does it too, but because of the visual design of the plants, you immediately know they're going to be bouncy. They're springy, they look way more cartoony. They have coils, the planet's already been established to be like sort of wacky, like a platforming gimmick-based planet. So like when you see the plants in this planet, you're just immediately like, oh yeah, if I jump on those, they're gonna bounce me. Because they have coils and look so cartoony and stretchy. If Monster High had similar visual language, then using plants for platforms in that game would also be a lot nicer. Nicer to the player, I mean. It wouldn't fix any of the game design in Monster High, but it would fix a lot of the visual design and make the environment a lot more pleasant to look at. Visual design is really important, and the wacky bouncy plants in this level fit a lot with the wacky farming setting. Unfortunately, this level's pretty much over and it's boss fight time. So this boss comes in multiple phases, and just like most of this level, it feels very un-Ratchet and Clank for the most of it. The first phase is Luna flying at us in a crop duster, and we have to jump out of the way of the bullets. It's pretty simple. I guess you don't technically have to jump, you can just walk out of the way, but jumping makes me feel better. It's a pretty simple endless runner style dodge from one plane to the other sort of deal, except you have absolute control over Ratchet's movement. It doesn't matter all that much. It's really easy to avoid the gunfire. The game's really lenient with it. The second phase is more endless runner style platforming. We just keep jumping over and over and we'll be fine. This is arguably even easier than the first phase, since as long as you're double jumping, there's virtually nothing that can actually stop you. But it does look cool. You can say that about it. This is a very cool looking section, even if there's virtually no challenge to it. There is a third and final phase, though, because of course we actually have to fight Luna. We can't just run from her infinitely. You probably thought this was going to be the fighting part, but no, we're still not there yet. We have a really entertaining diversion where we have to avoid getting smashed by goddamn rocks. Usually I just walk around in a circle and, you know, swerve left and right to avoid the shadows. It's nothing too hard if you've ever done this avoid falling rocks shit before, but if you're new to it, it can be quite frustrating, as I found out when I played the PSP version and had not played many games with challenges like this previously.
So, the courageous superheroes finally catch the little girl.
We know what you are, Luna.
What we don't know is why.
We knew you'd fall for it, Ratchet. You can't resist playing the hero. We just needed to get you to our lab so we could extract your DNA, and this was the easiest way to do it.
But why do you need his DNA?
We Technomites are tired of being taken advantage of. Everyone uses our technology, but no one gives us credit. Our robots are strong, but as you have demonstrated, they are no match for Ratchet. So, we're making our own Ratchets.
What?
Using our advanced cloning technology, Emperor Otto has begun creating an entire army of Ratchets. His clone factory is churning them out as we speak. You are already too late to stop him.
I'm not even going to pretend there's a justification for that really stupid villain motivation. So for this boss fight, we jump over the thing when it comes at us. I know there's a name for this thing, but I forgot it. Anyway, we jump over Luna when she comes at us to the left or right. She will also fire things at us, which as usual we dodge by moving around the platform and strafing. The trick though is that the gas bombs she shoots, we don't want to strafe constantly or we'll just run into those. We want to just strafe a little bit to get out of the gas cloud's range. Otherwise we'll end up strafing into the thing we're trying to avoid when she shoots another one, as I found out. I died to that many times. And you may not think that's so bad, but you have to restart the other phases of this fight if you want to get back to this phase. So it's quite irritating.
The construction of this robot is more advanced than anything I have seen.
Hey, advanced or not, she took the factory coordinates with her when we, well, disabled her.
I believe I may be able to interface with her to retrieve those coordinates.
I don't know, Clank. Something this advanced must have security programs to keep you from doing that.
I am sure I will have no trouble avoiding whatever security she has installed. Here we go. Past the cerebral shield. Avoid the mainframe intake security protocol. And... bingo.
You got it?
Yes. The coordinates are...
Clank! Oh, no. Now what? I got it. Here I come, Clank. Hang on!
Freeze! Hands in the air! Now turn around very slowly.
Who are you?
I'm Clank security backup. Come online whenever his power's out to protect his circuitry. Hey, you're Ratchet, aren't you?
Yeah?
Whew. I thought you were another one of them soldiers that came marching through here. I think they're trying to get in the old memory bank.
Well, I'm here to get rid of them and figure out how to wake Clank.
Well, if you can get all the soldiers out of here, I'll throw the auxiliary switch to turn Clank back on. I can't do it until all the soldiers are gone, though.
So if you were like me, you might have been thinking, oh sweet, a level inside of Clank. And I have some good news for you and some bad news for you. The good news is the level is rad as shit. The bad news is the level has very little to do with Clank, but it's still rad as shit. This is the penultimate level, and it continues the previous level's tradition of having almost nothing to do with Ratchet and Clank, but being a really awesome platforming level. This one has much better scenery than the last one. It strikes a good balance between that dumb fictional representation of circuitry and robotics that fiction usually has and actual circuitry and robotics, sort of a nice in-between, I assume for stylistic functions. Aside from a few key parts, it can be almost impossible to decipher where we are inside of Clank at any given moment, which is one of the downsides to this level. But the level in general still looks really gorgeous. And you know, it seems a little audacious to be able to expect what might be inside of Clank anyway, so you know, maybe there is a weird spiral slope inside of Clank. The ramp could be used for that security guard that we encountered at the very beginning of the level. This game has a weird thing about tiny people. There's a lot of tiny people in this video game, but you know, I guess that's its whole thing. I really like these circuit hallways. These are really cool. I like the doors, I like the wires on the ground, I like the terminals at the sides. It's all very creative visually. I'm not sure what they're meant to represent inside Clank. By the way, now seems a good time to say thank God for the shock rocket. If you're still using the basic, what's it called? Not lacerator, what is it called in this one? Anyway, if you're still using the basic straight shotgun, which now has 4 barrels thanks to mods, the enemies are going to be taking way too many hits to go down, and you're going to get frustrated real fast. The shock rocket is very, very helpful this late in the game. I recommend picking it up at Dayni Moons and just using it to blast through everything on your way to the end game. This room is actually kind of cool because while you're strafing, you do have to jump over the electric hazards in the floor. And I actually quite like that. I wish the game had more platforming integrated with the shooting. But I wish the shooting were better also. I wish I could say that this room was a sign of things to come, and that the level layout and enemy design is going to get better and better in the final level after this one. But honestly, it's going to get a lot worse. Because for the final level, they just throw a bunch of enemies at you all at once, like some Serious Sam style shit. And you know, there's a reason that works in Serious Sam. And to work in Ratchet and Clank, they need to make some changes to the movement style, the enemy designs, a lot of things, really. It's not as though the game becomes, like, fucking broken or anything in the final level, it's just... you clearly weren't supposed to fight that many enemies at once. And you most certainly weren't meant to fight them in cramped rooms or big arenas. Both of those are actually quite bad. Maybe a middle ground would be nice, like the docking bay from that medical outpost level. There's parts of this level I remember very vividly, like this room in here where there's just a big chasm with a really giant fan. I'm not sure what this giant fan does, but it sticks out because there's not a lot of games where you press a button on a giant fan like this. You know, this doesn't really happen in many video games. So it's quite memorable, as is the scenery, with all these see-through windows with some sort of mid-2000s tech pattern on them. You know, it just kind of sticks out. In a good way. Not to say it was anything interesting mechanically, but visually it's memorable. Being able to purchase ammo from anywhere with the item we bought is very helpful, because running out of shock rocket ammo sucks this late in the game. I really don't want to have to fall back on the combustor, lacerator, whatever the hell you call that basic gun we have. I really don't like using that. It's loud, it's ineffective this late in the game, and it's just not a good time. You may have noticed at the start of the level we also bought the static barrier, which gives us 1 free hit. If we have the static barrier up while we're attacked, we don't take damage from a hit. And we have 5 uses of the static barrier, so that's 5 hits that we have extra now. Which is a lot in a Ratchet and Clank game. That's like a fuck ton. Because you die really, really fast in Ratchet and Clank games. Aside from some exceptions, like the 2016 reboot and, oh yeah, the normal difficulty on Deadlocked. Anyway, I wouldn't say this level is exactly eye candy or anything, but it fits really well with the system limitations on the original PSP, and it still looks nice on the PS2. It's very stylized. I like the chips. I like the chips on the walls. And I'm sure when this game came out, there was something magical about starting up your PSP and playing a level where Ratchet was going inside Clank. You know, when you were holding all that in the palm of your hand. I'm sure that was quite awe-inspiring when the game came out. You know, for all the things I dislike about Size Matters, I like about as much, at least in the PS2 version. In the PSP version, I may not like the controls or camera, but I can say that the PSP version ultimately controls a lot better than the original Death Jr. You know, Death Jr. was meant to be the killer app for the PlayStation Portable. It was meant to show you that you could have console-quality experiences on handhelds now, and it ended up being Size Matters that showed that instead. I wonder if those chips actually mean anything. It's kind of sad what happened to Death Jr. because I remember there being significant hype for it, but I think it only sold around 170,000 copies, maybe 190,000. And that's only slightly more than Beatdown on the PS2. That's gotta sting. I don't know how they got funding to make a second game with sales like that, but I'm glad they did, and I'm glad they somehow got funding to also make a Wii version of the second game that functions more as a complete remake. Where are they getting all that money from? I guess from all the licensed games they were doing before then. You know, a lot of developers do that. They spend a lot of time working on licensed games, which are relatively low risk. And then after they've saved up enough money, they go for a big original IP that they can call their own. A lot of studios don't make it that far, though. Like the studio behind Iron Man and Golden Axe Beast Rider wanted to do that, but they didn't make it. And that's quite sad. There's this article in a magazine, I can't remember, that goes in detail about how mismanaged that studio was during the development of, oh, hold on. So, we're repairing Clank's heart by putting the pieces of his heart back together using the polarizer. And this isn't like super special mechanically or anything. We have to jump over the pulses from his heart. But I do want to point out that this is rad as shit. Going inside a robot and putting its heart back together using a magnetic tool. That's fucking rad. Even if it doesn't, like, do anything special in terms of platforming. And yes, you can jump over things while you're holding a piece of his heart.
Great work! Now, stand back, son. You better get out of here before the automatic virus detection program comes online and hunts you down. I'd head for the mouth if I were you.
It's time for the second half of the level, which I think looks even cooler than the first. There's a noticeably different color palette, a greater abundance of fans, and the circuitry is a lot larger. I'm not sure if that's, like, better or worse visual design, it's just a noticeable change. I like that even though we've been inside Clank this entire level, the two halves of the level have very distinct looks to them. Like, you might be able to think they're two different levels entirely if you just looked at screenshots. Also, there's new enemies in this part, and we get more use out of the polarizer. This half of the level is far more platforming and puzzle focused than the first half. There's avoiding lasers, there's walking on ceilings, and there's more creative use for the polarizer. I won't say it makes you think or anything like that beyond the most basic level, like, will this hurt me if I press this button? But it adds a lot of environmental variety, and again, feels like it's from a completely different game. I like these sparks moving around on the circuit board. That's probably not healthy for Clank, but it's a neat visual touch, and they hurt. They hurt. You know, if video games didn't stop having demos, this would definitely be the thing they should have used as the demo level for this game in particular. The Inside of Clank level. Because it has a great selling point just in name alone, like, you go inside of Clank, that sounds awesome. So the concept alone would intrigue a lot of people for a demo. It looks awesome. It has a lot of cute gadget-based platforming that would remind people more of the original Ratchet and Clank. And this level has a really good mix of shooting and jumping, and they can't tell how bad the shooting is yet, because it's less bad here than everywhere else in the game. Another good level would be the Technomite homeworld, but that one has more problems in it that might turn some people off. That being said, this game seemed to sell largely on brand, so I'm not sure what you used as a demo would really matter. I feel like people would, I feel like it would still, excuse me, I think it would sell exactly as good, no matter what. I feel like you may have to actively try to make a bad demo to make people not buy a portable Ratchet and Clank game. Like, if you owned a PSP, you probably either considered buying this game, a friend had it, or you had it. I'm sure this game is also really easy to make a trailer for because of the huge variety in settings and platforming gimmicks. Like, the enemy types and shooting may be lacking, but when there's this much variety in platforming hazards and the levels look this varied and nice, it's probably super easy to put a nice looking trailer together, especially when you're selling this on the PSP. Like, this room looks great. Insert a clip into the trailer of Ratchet swing-shotting his way across this room and over obstacles. Bam! That's a clip for the trailer right there. This room looks great, especially on the PSP. It shows that there's still swing-shot platforming in the game. You know, make sure in each clip Ratchet is wearing a completely different set of armor. That way it conveys to the player without directly telling them that there's a lot of armor in this game, and show the different armor abilities passively while the trailer is going on. Must have been really easy to make a trailer for this game, is what I'm saying. It must have been super easy. Okay, I just looked up the trailer, and it's nowhere near that creative or fluid, but it's still not a bad trailer. That's mostly due to the fact that, again, the game is really easy to make a trailer for. But yeah, the official trailer for this game wasn't bad or anything, but that's because it'd be kind of hard to make a bad trailer for this game unless you were specifically looking for the bad parts. There are some games that are just good to make trailers with. That doesn't mean the game is good. There are a lot of bad games that are easy to make good trailers with, and a lot of good games that are easy to make bad trailers with. Trailers aren't the best thing. But, you know, there's an art to making a good trailer, and Size Matters makes that art rather easy. They used a weird song in that trailer that I don't recall hearing anywhere in the game, though, and I kind of want to know what that song is, but I'm not going to stress about it because there's absolutely no way I would ever fucking find out. Like, not in a million years. It just wouldn't happen. The trailer is very low quality. It's probably from some band that nobody's heard of. It was really cheap to commission. It's just not get obsessed over that. So anyway, this is what I was talking about with the polarizer getting creative use, and you not having to really think about it, but it still being cool. Like, if you're capable of basic spatial awareness, this section is easy. Oh, by the way, I made trailers for some games I liked sometimes. That was fun. I think making trailers is fun. Video editing is kind of fun. We got the Mega Bomb armor now, like the full set. It stores a charge when we get hit, and we can unleash the charge by attacking enemies. That's why we're glowing red right now. I mean, yeah, I made unofficial fan trailers for Ghostly Adventures and Soul Fighter and Chameleon Twist 2, but I'm sure they're better than the actual trailers. I am that egotistical, I'm sure.
happened.
You got short-circuited when you interfaced with Luna.
She must have had a level 9 access protocol installed, which activates retroactively
Oh,
when I...
of course you did. Right before you conked out, you said you found the clone factory coordinates.
Accessing? Yes, I do have them. I cannot believe I was stupid enough to make such a simple mistake.
It happens to the best of us, pal. The important thing is, you got the coordinates.
I suppose you are right. We should get going.
Ugh, I don't believe it. Another dead end. You lose a contact or something?
Just as I suspected.
Of course! The factory shrunk. Well, let's stomp around until we squish it, huh?
I do not think it will be that easy to find.
Fine. This little Emperor Otto should be a piece of cake anyway. Let's get shrinking.
I was gonna make a quick jab at the fact that Ratchet did a pose when there's literally no one here except Slim Cognito, but actually no, I quite like that, and I wish he did a pose every level, honestly. I mean, Ken does a pose in every level of Ken's Rage, and that's just fantastic. It's not like self-motivational poses and catchphrases to increase determination are like unheard of or anything. Like professional athletes and professional racers and shit do that all the time. I don't see why it would be any different for superheroes. In fact, I bet superheroes would do it more often. So more superheroes should strike poses and say cheesy catchphrases and shit, I think. So I guess we're at the end game, huh? The music for this level really kicks ass. Most of the level is jumping around in small rooms, firing while strafing. You fight Ratchet clones, but don't get your hopes up. The Ratchet clones are not actually clones of Ratchet. Oh my god. Excuse me. The Ratchet clones are not actually clones of Ratchet. They look kind of like Ratchet, but they're really just a normal enemy. A normal enemy type. That rice isn't going down so good. Now, if I could stay uninterrupted by bodily functions long enough to talk about the game design, the Ratchet clones you fight are not actually clones of Ratchet. They do not fight you with the arsenal that you used. There are two types of Ratchet clones. There are Ratchet clones with a blaster and Ratchet clones with a wrench. Sadly, they do not switch between the wrench and gun as you might during actual gameplay, and they are lacking any of the more colorful weapons from your arsenal. It's just standard enemy with blaster and standard enemy with melee weapon, but they come at you in much larger numbers than previous enemies you've seen. So really the fact they look like Ratchet is completely non-consequential. They don't hop around like mad, they don't strafe, they don't use any advanced shooting tactics. They just run at you and use their weapon of choice. They're completely brain dead, like every other enemy in the game. Now, I've played quite a few Ratchet and Clank games, and I feel like if you're going to steal Ratchet's DNA, the first thing you should check for is to make sure that the clones jump around in circles and fire madly. Because that's mostly what you do in this game. And the fact that the clones don't do that tells me maybe something went wrong during the cloning process. I don't know a whole lot about how clone factories work, because as far as I know those aren't real, but I'm not sure what the giant room full of lava really brings to the equation, unless it's just there because this is an evil lair. I mean, the evil lair in the Tasmanian Tiger is full of lava and shit, but that's a really stereotypical evil lair, because the villain in that game is really hammy and over the top. And I can't imagine the utility of having a hallway composed entirely of lava right before the cloning chambers in here, where the clones are presumably birthed, because they're coming out of these little pods in the wall. If you don't have the shock rocket by this point, by the way, and you're still using the basic blaster, this is just going to be the worst, because as you can see, the camera angle isn't the fucking best thing in the world, and that goes double for the PSP version. Basically, all I'm doing is locking onto enemies, strafing, jumping, and shooting at the same time. That's all I'm doing to win. And that can be surprisingly hard in the PSP version, and also when you can't see what you're doing. A lot of the challenge in this level just comes from the fact that sometimes enemies will decide to spawn behind you. But if you fail a room, you'll get used to where they spawn, so it won't be that hard on repeated attempts. There's not a lot of strategy I can offer to this game. Oh boy, here is the platforming challenge in this game, where the platforming is suddenly like, hey, what if we explored the really basic wall jumping and double jumping mechanics as hard as possible out of nowhere, and then never did anything like this for the rest of the game? And it's not like I'm complaining about the challenge here. This is hard, but quite doable. It's just, you never really see anything like this anywhere else in the game. The cylinder is quite slippery, so you have to land dead center on it, and it's very easy to accidentally press X one too many times and end up hovering or just slipping off the platform. Requires a very surprising level of precision. And in addition, you have to quickly jump off the cylinder and wall jump, which again can cause you to press the X button one too many times and slip off the platform. I've played games much harder than this, so this is nothing, but seeing it in the middle of this game, which by all accounts hasn't really been that challenging outside of some boss battles, I mean, it's just kind of weird, because for this specific platforming challenge, they combine the physics and wall jumping mechanics in such a way as to make a genuinely difficult platforming challenge, because it plays on your ability to preempt the cylinder's movement, your ability to account for the physics of the cylinder, and your ability not to overreact when jumping on the cylinder and accidentally jump too many times. Of course, it's entirely possible I'm just missing something incredibly basic, and it's not supposed to be like this. But if it is supposed to be like this, then I could see a lot of people getting frustrated at this segment. And, you know, I doubt they'd give up the game at this point because this is the final level, but probably color their memories a bit negatively. Again, it's not like I'm complaining about the challenge. I like things like this. It's just so weird to see it in the middle of nowhere after the rest of the game has been so easy. And again, you know, it's just entirely possible I'm being stupid. Maybe I'm doing this to myself. But if I am, is that really a bad thing? I mean, because I'm enjoying doing this. So if it's not intentional, then I wish it were, is what I'm saying. Like, for all I know, there could be a really simple way to get up there that I'm just blatantly overlooking. But I like this way better, because it makes me think and have to use my skills in the jumpings. And this game doesn't really ask you to use your skills in the jumpings so much, or the shootings, outside of the really irritating boss fight against Luna, and the equally irritating boss fight against Emperor Otto, which won't be as irritating because of the things we've purchased. Maybe I missed a switch that makes the cylinder go up instead of down. Maybe I'm just supposed to long jump or high jump over to the wall jumping platform so that way I can get higher instead of using the cylinder. But again, even if that is the case, I kind of wish this was the intended way to do it. And I'm really hoping it was the intended way to do it, because that would make the game really weird. Make me wonder why they suddenly decided it was time. Okay, we're done. Enough of that interesting diversion. It's time to jump into several more rooms full of really generic enemy types and then jump around in circles and shoot at them some more. This time there are some dummies in the way that you could accidentally shoot instead of the real clones. Not that it matters. We can also entirely skip the fight against the clones and enter the grind rail section if we're quick enough. I was not quick enough, sadly. I mean, with the shock rocket, the shooting is noticeably less irritating and cumbersome, but it's still not something, excuse me, it's still not something I would prefer to do. Would much rather not do it at all. And as it's been established, I deeply love how thoroughly the game explores the grind rail mechanics, far deeper than any other Ratchet & Clank game, period. In fact, I feel like it's understandable why I would want to head straight for the grind rail section, for many reasons. I'm so confused how they could be like, oh yeah, we got to explore the grind rail segments, which are the criminally neglected segments in Ratchet & Clank as thoroughly as possible. But the shooting, we don't need to worry too much about that. Don't need to make too many interesting enemy types or, like, make sure that everything is properly balanced or whatever. But the grind rail sections, we need to absolutely push those to their limit, alright? We need to make sure the player feels the challenge. We need to make sure that switching rails becomes more important than ever, that they time their jumps absolutely perfectly, and have an impeccable sense of rhythm with the grind rail. You know, like, look at this shit. This is just an incredible level of precision that you never see anywhere else in grind rail segments in Ratchet and Clank. This is just ridiculously so much more creative than everything else the game has to offer in terms of platforming or shooting design. Like, Insomniac should be legit ashamed they never made a grind rail section as good as that, because that was amazingly well done. That's just basic platforming mechanics taken to their extreme in such a fine way. Like, even the Sonic series, where the grind rail shit was popularized, didn't do that as well. But no, they took every single thing you can do on a grind rail and explored it as thoroughly as I think you could without being unfair about it. So, you know, kind of would like to see that level of care extended to other facets of the game. Like the shooting, for example. Which isn't great. Mostly just this. A lot of this. Again, the music here is nice, though. I told you there were a lot of enemies in this level, right? I'm pretty sure I mentioned that at least twice, because there are a lot of enemies in this level, and they just flood the room. And it's really weird and irritating. If you didn't have the shock rocket or some sort of area effect projectile, then that would get really irritating really fast. In this room, the clones hop out of boxes, but instead of dealing with them, we're just going to press the button and leave. Because I don't feel like fighting these guys. I just don't feel like it. So we're just going to kind of leave, and the blast doors will close behind us, which will make sure that they don't follow us. It's no problem. No problem at all. I think we're near the end of the game now. I bought the, what the fuck is that laser called? The laser tracer, which is probably the most powerful gun in the game aside from the Rhino.
Ratchet, how very nice to see you. Although I'm sure you've seen enough of yourself already.
Otto, I am sorry that no one gives you credit for your work, but there are other ways to earn respect.
You actually bought that cheesy story. This isn't about credit for our work or respect or whatever nonsense you've come to believe. This is about power, and what is more powerful than intelligence?
The Rhino?
Nothing is stronger than the power of the mind. Do you see this area behind me? That is what this has all been leading up to. I have developed the technology to transfer the intelligence from the being in one chamber to the being in the other.
What?
After I have grown these clones to full size, I'm going to use my Ratchet army to gather every intelligent being in the solar system. Then I will transfer all of their brain power to me to become the most intelligent entity the universe has ever known.
That is pure evil.
Yeah? Well, none of this will happen until you get by us.
Easier done than said.
I'm at kind of like a crossroads here. Should I even talk about how awful that villain plan is? Like, he says nothing is more powerful than intelligence, but he is easily one of the least intelligent people in any Ratchet & Clank anything. Like, his entire plan is just so ridiculously stupid. I don't even know where to start with it. Even if his Ratchet clones were strong enough to take over the universe, why would you... There's just so much. You know what? No, maybe he needs this, alright? If he actually did create a machine that will allow him to gain the intelligence of other beings, he needs that. Okay? He desperately needs that. In fact, most people in this video game's narrative need that. Alright? It's for the greater good. Like, I genuinely don't have the emotional energy to talk about this stupid villain plan anymore, so let's talk about the game design. There are two new types of Ratchet clones here. There's ones that run at you really quickly, and then there's slow ones with a concussion blaster. In order to win this section, you strafe around the very outside of the arena and press the shoot button the whole time. You're just supposed to do it until the timer runs out. It's like there's nothing challenging about this even a little bit. You just walk around the outside of the arena and mash the shooty button for, what's that timer say, a minute and 30 seconds about now? It's fucking great and not irritating and stupid. This game isn't that long, but it has been such an emotional fucking roller coaster. Like, I absolutely adored the last level. I've adored a lot of levels and game design in this game, but then there's shit like this and the narrative. And I just wonder how the same people that made those grind rail sections also made this. Maybe someone different was responsible for the grind rail sections than the shooting. You know, and maybe the person that made the platforming segments really liked older 3D platformers and wanted to bring that inspiration into Ratchet and Clank. Maybe there wasn't really anyone on the team well-versed in third-person shooting mechanics, so they didn't know how to properly balance the third-person shooter. Especially one with mechanics as weird as Ratchet and Clank. Like, maybe they just had no idea how to do that. And maybe the story originally made more sense, but as is usually the case with script writing for video games, something got changed or a lot of details were removed or something. But the story is so deeply flawed on a fundamental basic level, I can't imagine that being the case, unless the original villain motivation and plot beats were like entirely different before or something. Because everything from the dialogue to the pacing to the overarching plot to the Quark subplot that we haven't heard anything about in 5 years is just so horrendously done. Like, incompetent on nearly every level. Is it so hard to look at a script and ask if it makes sense?
Looks like Otto overlooked one thing. I'm not half as good without you.
True.
Papa! Is that you?
Yes, it's me, you idiot. I mean, son. Now be a good boy and get those two out of here.
Papa! Why did you make Quark so tiny?
I got a job to do, son, and it's time I take care of your little playmates.
See, it just keeps getting worse. It just gets worse and worse in so many new ways, and I just can't even... Like, did they not have shrink ray technology before? Did he really need Quark to get the shrink ray away from Ratchet and Clank? What was the point in going through this convoluted strategy to manipulate Quark when you could have just as easily gotten literally any other normal-sized person to grab Ratchet and Clank and get the shrink ray? There are so many better and easier ways to do. What the fuck is with this game?
Ooh, nice shooting. Very clever, too. Now, where were we? This is getting better all the time.
And what was that bullshit about I'm not half as good without you? Because, like, aside from this segment right here, like, Clank didn't do jack shit during this entire cloning facility. Like, Ratchet could easily have taken on all those clones by himself without any help from Clank whatsoever. Also, the strategy for this boss battle is just be as aggressive as physically possible. There's like nothing special about it at all, especially in comparison to other giant Clank segments in previous games. So, you know, it fails at that too.
Papa? Can I have a piggyback ride? You should be more careful. You almost hit me with that.
Seriously, what the fuck did they do to Quark's character? Like, he's not a bumbling idiot. How did you get that from Quark's previous appearances? Quark is not an idiot. He's incredibly manipulative and intelligent. He just uses his intelligence for really shitty things. Like, did he get a lobotomy and it happened off screen or some shit? Because this version of Quark acts absolutely nothing like Captain Quark in any capacity. If his parents were actually dead, I don't think he would legitimately give this much of a shit about it. Like, he wouldn't be in a fever searching for his real parents. He would be drumming up his lost parents as some kind of publicity stunt, and like holding interviews to find out which people might be his real parents. And his real parents would actually show up at the interview and he would dismiss them because they weren't good enough for publicity or some shit. That's the Captain Quark that's been established in previous games. I don't know what sort of fucked up backwards version of Captain Quark these people have been watching for the past 4 games, but apparently it's entirely different. Like, weird, muscular, and selfish is not synonymous with stupid. He has some very childlike traits to him, yes, but not to this degree. He's clearly intelligent enough to be the most manipulative person in all of Ratchet and Clank, so I don't see where they got this weird version of his character from, and I don't appreciate it. Remember how well written he was in Up Your Arsenal? That was some really good shit. Like, he's portrayed as such like a human person in Up Your Arsenal. Like, when you find him at his secret hideout after that final secret vid comic, like, it's not that he's, like, super fucked up or some shit like that. He just didn't want to die. Like, I love that line where he goes, "I almost died. Me, Captain Quark." Like, he seriously almost died being a hero, and he cannot imagine doing that, because he just doesn't want to die. You know, he's human. It's not that he's stupid, it's just that he's manipulative and lacks courage. And that lack of courage is what makes him not a hero. He's not willing to put his life on the line. And the one time he accidentally did do that, he immediately freaked the fuck out and backed out of the whole thing. Like, he was willing to sacrifice the entire galaxy because he was a coward. And that's fair, you know? Most people do not have the courage to fight an entire galaxy full of evil. But most people also do not pretend to be a hero. Most people do not have an entire galaxy depending on them. People legitimately were looking to Captain Quark to save the world. Well, the galaxy, universe, whatever. But he was a fraud. Anyway, the Emperor Auto fight, you blast away at his shield, and then after his shield is gone, you can shoot him directly and stuff. Use the shock rockets a lot. Jump over the green energy waves. Jump over the green hands. Use the static barrier if you don't want to get hit, because you probably don't care enough to pay attention to his boss fight pattern. Because after those cutscenes, you just want the game to be over. But then you realize that, like, there's more cutscenes after the final boss, probably. And you can't imagine how it will get any worse, but then it will get worse. And you're so confused how it keeps getting worse during the last level, like, how the narrative gets even worse and worse. It's just, like, impressive even, like they were trying to make it bad or something. Should I be proud of them? Should I be disappointed in them? Should I pretend I know what's going on? Is this boss fight over yet? Because I, like, exhausted all the stuff I'm willing to complain about. There's, like, dozens more things to bitch about, but I've exhausted all the things I am personally willing to complain about. So I'd really like if the boss fight would be over now, and I'd stop trying to use the tracking laser to attack Emperor Auto, because it's not working, and I should just use the shock rockets instead, or even the regular blaster. Literally anything besides the tracing laser would be good.
What is it, pal?
These are Quark's real parents. Scrunch says they were killed by defective equipment created by the Technomites.
Wow, that really bites. Should we tell Quark?
I think he already knows.
So now, because of him, I'll never know my real parents.
I recognize your parents from the photo. They were great superheroes in their day. You should be very proud.
Somehow, I don't think pride is what he's after.
How could you do something so evil? You knew the truth and you used it against me to get what you wanted. Now, I'm going to get what I want. What are you doing? You don't know how it works! You think I'm an idiot, do you? Well, how about having this brain instead of yours? You want intelligence? You're about to get... the opposite of that.
I don't think that's such a good idea, Quark. Why don't you climb out of there, and let's see if we can calm you down a bit, huh?
Yes, Quark, you should consider what you are about to do. Otto is right. You do not know the effect of this machine.
At this point, I don't care.
Oh no. Now what are we gonna do with him?
It appears that Scrunch just added another family member.
Great. Can we get out of here now? I've got another massage scheduled on Pokitaru in an hour.
You got it.
So get your Battle Ratchet today! It's the most realistic fighting toy ever created!
Warning. Battle Ratchet is a living creature that may behave unpredictably. Do not keep Battle Ratchet in original package unless sufficient air holes are provided.
Well, I'm glad they found a use for those things.
Yes, and they seem to do a good job of keeping Quark company.
So there I was, face to tentacle with a squid beast of Oceania 8. I pulled out my trusty electro gun, but the salt water had shorted it out. Hey, I was just getting to the good part.
He may be small, but his ego's still big, huh?
So that was Ratchet and Clank Size Matters. Holy shit, is that one all over the goddamn place. I will say, like, largely, I enjoyed the gameplay. The shooting isn't so great, but I feel like there's enough variety in locations, and the platforming, especially the grind rail platforming and the platforming gimmicks, such as the squirt gun, are fun enough to carry the game. There's some genuinely creative use of what's actually there. It brings back memories of other 3D platformers that are completely separate from the Ratchet & Clank license. But being forced to watch the cutscenes for like the third time and finding new things wrong with the narrative each time, it just wears on you after a while. But it's over now, and I would recommend playing it if you liked the gameplay parts that you saw, but maybe skip the cutscenes. Maybe skip those.